There are a lot of George R. R. Martin shows in development, one coming pretty soon, others coming eventually, although we don't know exactly which ones. Some of them are bound to get made because there's so many of them. There have, along the way, been changes in production, writing, and overall status, castings or not castings, lots of different things, depending on which show we're talking about. And there's, well, a partial list here. The 10,000 Ships, the Conquest, the Sea Snake, the Golden Empire, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, a few other rumors and shows that are no longer in development are on the agenda today too. We'll mention those, clear that up a bit. And some of these shows have gone under different names, so you don't always know, like the Sea Snake was originally called Nine Voyages, etc. There, so sometimes it might sound like there's multiple shows, but really it's just a changed name. We're also going to talk a little bit about the Heren Hall stage play and some tidbits on House of the Dragon Season 3, including George R. R. Martin's recent takes, aka spilling of the tea publicly. He was a little angry, perhaps a little testy, but we shall see what that all is. I've got a lot of breakdowns there. I've got some takes on that. And we'll close out the episode with some coverage of DragonCon 2024, which all three of us attended. And two of us wore World of Ice and Fire costumes, which we'll show you pictures of. So that'll be fun. And a few other pictures that were not us, but also World of Ice and Fire related. We've got all that and more on this episode of History of Westeros podcast. Hello and welcome back, everybody. This will be our final show coverage until Knight of Seven Kingdoms comes out. Well, the trailer or what have you. Now, with one exception, we're going to put out a scripted short video on the intro of House of the Dragon Season 2. So it's not even a full podcast, just like a less than 20-minute video, but technically that's show coverage. So wanted to throw that out there. But yeah, we'll discuss all these shows that are coming out in the future, and then we'll move back to book coverage. The rest of 2024 and into 2025 will be all book stuff. Maybe the occasional mention of a show here and there, but yeah, 99% book focused. Sean, welcome back. We haven't had you on in a few weeks. How's it going?
Good to be back.
Yeah, I see you got a Hedge Knight, Knight of the Seven Kingdoms shirt on, and I've got a Sea Snake shirt on, so we've got our spin-off shirts ready to go.
I'm hoping to get some new shirts when Duncan Egg comes out. This is I don't know, the image of his shield, his coat of arms and whatever is pretty much only someone who's read that book will have any idea what this is.
Good point. They're either like, oh, I recognize that, or they have no idea whatsoever. Yeah. It's a little niche, or yeah. But yeah, you're right, because when the show gets closer, of course, there's going to be shirts and stickers and items of, things they can sell, swords and armor and sigils, whatever they come up with,
Lots of potential imagery and symbols and such.
Yeah, they won't miss their chance to make a few extra bucks on marketing and merchandise, and we won't miss our chance to get a little of that because hey, that stuff's cool.
I would buy some themed eggs.
Themed eggs. Yeah, I would too. Themed eggs sounds really cool. Totally down for that. If you have questions about any of the spin-offs or anything in general, you can certainly ask them here live if you're attending the live stream. And if you're not attending the live stream, well, why not hit us up at westeroshistory@gmail.com or hit us up on Discord or Facebook or X, wherever you see us is a fair game to interact with us. And I'm going to start off today with something we haven't done in a little while, which is our trivia question. We like to do trivia questions when we're doing book coverage. This is a show episode, of course, but I wanted to throw a trivia question in there. The first spin-off show. So yes, it is a trivia question about the spin-offs. The first spin-off show, which was canceled, was called Blood Moon. It would have featured the original Long Night. The question is, what two houses were going to marry in the unseen pilot? Yes, that is the question, and I will give you the answer at the end of the episode. This isn't one of those times where the answer is during the episode, though, because we're not going to talk about Blood Moon. It was canceled a long time. There's no updates there. There's nothing really to say about it other than trivia, apparently. But here's something cool. We've got an image for you. I want to start off by shouting out our friend Zionius. That's Zionius. That's their Twitter handle. You could find them there. But they've compiled a timeline of Game of Thrones successor shows. gives them their different names, the different developers and potential showrunners, when development ended and or restarted. Because some of these, for example, the Nymeria show has started and stopped and restarted. Well, there's 3 different phases of it. It's currently in development, but it's on its 3rd writer and its 2nd name, and it's undergone other changes as we'll talk about. So that's just one example, but as you can see here, it's even got like Doom of Valyria on there, which that was an idea back in like 2017, and it has not come back as an idea as far as we know. Aegon's Conquest was first discussed way back also in 2017. It was abandoned pretty quickly, but now it's back as an idea as of about mid-2022, and it's gaining steam, is perhaps the most likely next show to be made. So anyway, yeah.
Zionius keeps this up to date. If you follow them on Twitter, they do frequently update this chart. As you can see, they most recently updated it with George's Bubonicon updates about which of the shows were animated and which were live action.
Absolutely, yeah. So things are always changing with this, so it's a nice thing to keep track of, and we really appreciate Zionius making this graphic. Yeah, go ahead and follow them on X if you use that site. I certainly understand if you don't.
They're also on Reddit. You could also follow Zionius on Reddit and see their updates. Just yes. Really a very useful follow on any social media.
One of the best sources for updates on this. Other things too, but this in particular.
You know, something I don't see on there, which is disappointing, is Robert's Rebellion. That's something that I'm like hopeful for.
Well, yeah, the Robert's Rebellion idea was only briefly entertained, but there is a piece of it that we're going to talk about, because the tourney at Heren Hall is probably the most important event just before Robert's Rebellion, and that's getting a stage play, which we're going to talk about. So there is at least that, but yeah, Robert's Rebellion not currently in development per se. I think there is some talk that it would eventually be, but I think there's other things that would have to happen first. But we'll see. Yeah. Anyway, folks, this is also a good time for me to point out that most of our show is audio, but occasionally we have reasons for you to look at what's going on screen. And if you use Spotify, you can just click the video button and turn the video feed on whenever there's a need to see something, and then turn it right back off, so you're not using as much bandwidth or what have you. So it's a nice little feature. Hopefully more podcast platforms have that option eventually. I think that's the way the industry is heading, more and more visuals when they're needed or useful, but not forcing visuals on people, because a lot of shows are going to be audio only, and that's still going to be most of our episodes will still be mostly audio, but we want to have those visuals in there. You know, they're pretty fun to talk about and see and analyze. They're a big part of the whole fandom. Okay, so let's start with Night of the Seven Kingdoms. That's the one that's it's great news, actually, great timing. Filming wrapped yesterday. Literally yesterday. So what great timing for this episode for us. And very fun to hear that they wrapped. It took about 3.5 to 4 months, which is pretty normal for filming. It would have been a little longer if it were a larger production, but yeah, this is just not as large a production as Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, for a lot of reasons that are kind of obvious. The production code name for the show is Sweetfoot, which we love that. A lot of these shows have production code names. So, you know, something to keep it from being spoiled to other people out there. Although Sweetfoot really does tell us everything we need to know. If we had heard Sweetfoot, we'd be like, okay, that's clearly the Hedge Knight. Like, that's Dunk's horse. So yeah, his palfrey, not his charger. Like, obviously his charger was wait, what's his other horse? Thunder. Yeah, Thunder. Right. Yeah. So multiple horses. You know, even the Hedge Knight can have multiple horses. Sean, did you know that this show was discussed as far back as 2013 as a possibility?
But that's like right after Game of Thrones started, right?
Oh, yeah. Because Game of Thrones was such a hit almost right away. Like a solid hit right away, and then it exploded around season 3. It was just gained steam before it just became a global phenomenon. And so immediately HBO started looking and say, hey, this guy's written other stuff, hasn't he? In the same world? Oh, okay, yeah, let's immediately get to that. But let's remember, in 2013, there was no World of Ice and Fire, and there was no Fire and Blood. So this is kind of all they had to look at was Dunk and Egg. So when those other things appeared, they became a higher priority, maybe. Or you never know. Stuff happening on the back end. Things that we're not privy to. But that's pretty neat.
I can imagine then and now, it's got to be a budgetary concern when you're making a show, right? Mm-hmm. And when you add things like dragons, the budget starts to swell. So I can imagine back then, Game of Thrones started off a little smaller scale, so they were thinking about but part of what made it so hugely world famous were dragons and such. So that probably their next follow up, as we could see, Dance of the Dragons, House of the Dragon wanted to feature that more, but
that costs a lot more.
And it seems like there's enough material and interest that every show doesn't have to be blockbuster action, right? They can have more dramatic, small scale stuff like the Dunk and Egg story.
Absolutely, and that's part of what makes this show easier to film. Of course, just consider Game of Thrones and the vast number of locations it had. Like, forget the production budget, forget the White Walkers and the dragons, which is a lot to forget, but just forget that. There was a vast number of locations. They were shooting in Canada, Iceland, Spain, Morocco, just like England, all over England and Ireland, just crazy locations, multiple things. House of the Dragon, not much different. Not quite as many locations, but a lot of locations. Huge cast, bigger production budget, more dragons, more CGI. And now we have this. Not only does it not have the big CGI outlay, there's no dragons. It doesn't have massive armies. It doesn't even have a lot of locations. It's got basically one location. There's probably a few others thrown in here and there, maybe some roads, a few trees, but we're not talking like 12 castles, you know?
Yeah, you don't need to get the contrast between the icy north and the wall and like the deserts of Dorne and in the, you don't, it's fundamentally the same. Even if we have a couple locations other than the tournament, it's still gonna be that same geographical area, same aesthetic or whatever, so.
Yeah, it's really cool. Now, Shay has got on screen some of the actors with their faces and their names, which is very helpful. It should be said that we don't know all of them. We'll get to that in a minute, but these are some of the ones we do know. We obviously know Dunk, we know Egg, we know Sir Arlen, which implies flashbacks, I guess. And Tenzin Crawford is Tanzel Too Tall. We've got a lot of the main ones. Here's a few other things that I think are interesting. The supervising art director is John Merry, who was the supervising art director for The Northman, which was a beautiful, dark, and film about basically Hamlet if he was Norse. So it's really good. I know a lot of y'all probably saw it, and it won a lot of awards. It wasn't like big, world blockbuster or anything like that. It also wasn't really about the action, even though it had action. It had pivotal action, but it was more about the story and conflict between characters and had some cool twists in it. So hopefully it has that feel to it. I would like that. The senior art director, his name is Harry Payne. And it's not like pain like ill in pain. I mean like Pain, like this man is in constant pain. Poor man. But he did 33 episodes of Game of Thrones, and he did Witcher Blood Origin. Art director, not writing. So he's not responsible for the bad writing in Witcher Blood Origin. And he also is the set designer for D&D Honor Among Thieves, which was a very beloved film that was quite popular and successful. I have yet to see it, but I've been told that I really need to address that lack because it was quite popular amongst my friends, at least. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited about the people they've got lined up for this in terms of making it look cool. And someone with Game of Thrones experience, someone with experience creating other types of worlds, other settings like the Northman. That sounds really positive to me. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, it's all the same realm that Dunk and Egg is in. This sort of medieval fantasy sort of horses and cinematography of the landscape and cities and castles of the time. It's seems like a good setup.
Yeah. Now they have two casting directors, which is a little unusual. Maybe that's not so unusual, but I thought it was usually one. But what's interesting about this pair is that they've worked together before. It's Lucy Bevan and Emily Brockman. Lucy Bevan's a little newer on the scene. Emily Brockman's a lot more experienced. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. Emily Brockman's the newer one, but they both have a lot of experience. They worked together on the show Cruella, and they worked together on the show Belfast. Now Emily Brockman also.
Cruella was the movie.
Oh, it was a movie? Okay, my bad. Sorry. Movie, good correction.
I think Belfast was a movie, too.
Oh, no, you're both right. They're both movies. In fact, I think this is the first show they've worked on. In fact, looking at this list, this is, I think, the first show they've worked on.
It's all movies.
It's all movies, right. Yeah. You're totally right. Good correction. Emily Brockman also did the UK casting for the recent blockbuster Deadpool and Wolverine. And Lucy Bevan was the casting director for both Batman, the Batman, that is, and Barbie, and The Golden Compass, The Last Legion, Pirates of the Caribbean, Stranger Tides, And the 2017 Beauty and the Beast, which I mentioned purely because George R. R. Martin used to write for the Beauty and the Beast TV show, which was, in the 80s. So not connected at all, just a funny coincidence there. So that's pretty cool. That's a lot of big credits there. Batman, Barbie, and some of those are fantasy credits too. Golden Compass, Last Legion. I guess you could say Pirates of the Caribbean, Stranger Tides is fantasy. Sure, why not? Yeah, it's got monsters and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool. I'm excited for that. Obviously, because she casted for Barbie, I think that clearly means we can expect all the Kingsguard to be in pink, right? Yeah. No, not really, but that would be funny. What else?
She might sneak a Bolton onto the King.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
What was it? Was it Sarah or Viscera that did that? Was it the Kingsguard?
Oh yeah, I think that was Viscera.
Viscera, yeah, I
yeah.
think it was too. Anyways, I sometimes mix the two of them up, but Viscera, yes.
Correct us if we're wrong, though, folks. So one funny thing about the fact that Lucy Bevan was casting director for the Batman is it's not the only Batman connection we're talking about today, but the other Batman connection has nothing to do with Dunk and Egg, so we'll come back to that. The complete list of characters so far. Now you'll see some of these on screen. Dunk and Egg, of course. Maekar, Daron, the Drunkard, Arian Brightflame, Baelor Breakspear, Stefan and Raymond Fossoway, Manfred Dundarian, Lionel Baratheon, Plumber, who is the wait, which one's Plumber? Oh, he's the Master of Games, I believe. Steely Pate, who of course is the blacksmith that helps with the armor and helps with Baelor's helmet at the end. Tanzel, who of course is the love interest. Sir Arlen, obviously who he was squire to and who passes presumably right at the beginning or in a flashback. I'm not sure how they're handling that. We have Lord Leo Tyrell in the upper right there. Steve Wall, he was Boholt in The Witcher, which was a brief role. He said a few gnarly lines and then got killed in the first episode of season 1. And we also have Humphrey Harding, one of the Humphreys, but not the other one yet. So we have, look at those two Fossoways. Edward Ashley, Sir Stefan, he's the one that's going to be the jerk, and Raymond's going to be the cool one that fights for Dunk and gets knighted by Sir Lionel.
Yeah, I mean, just visually looking at it, you can see that, like, Steely Pate looks like he jumps off the page.
Yes.
And I do think the Fossoways look like two Fossoways, and one looks a little bit nicer, and one looks a little bit more of, like, an aristocrat to me. Like, just looking at these guys, I'm like, they nailed it. But also going back to some of the other big names here, I'm very pleased about a bunch of the people cast here. One, Daniel Ings playing Lionel Baratheon. I love that actor. He's been in a million British comedies that I've watched, from Lovesick to Sex Education to I Hate Susie to I mean, my list could go on and on. I love this actor. I think he will be very good. I'm very amused by the fact that Tanzel is played by Tanzin. That just really cracks me up. And she is very tall, and she's a climber, so she's often tall and
a climber, you say?
Yeah,
Nice.
she's a big climber. She's always sharing climbing stories. I am quite interested in her. She just I would like them to do more with Tansel, I think, in general. Like, I would like to see Tansel outside of Dunk's POV. Do you know what I mean? Like, if we're following,
I bet they're going that
POVs,
way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to do the whole thing in the book where Tanzel is there and then we don't even see Dunk go to Dorne and never find, like, I don't think that's how they want to handle this. I think they want to tweak that a bit. Yeah.
And the other person I want to shout out here is Sam Spruill as Maekar Targaryen. This guy was so good in Fargo. I've heard he's good in other things too. We know him from Fargo as Old Munch.
Yeah, one of the most unique characters I've ever seen in a TV show.
Riveting.
Unbelievably unique and creative, the way they made this character. And the way Spruill plays him is part of why it's so amazing. Yeah, like, Munch was such a great part of Fargo season 5. A weird part, but weird in the best ways.
Okay, and I want to say,
oh,
did you watch that season, Sean?
Oh yeah, and I loved it, and I loved him, and I feel a little bit of a need to clarify that he wasn't, you said, like, unusual or weird, and I don't want to disagree with that, but he was a relatively stoic character. Like, I think he fits Maekar, right? He wasn't unusual or weird in some kind of, like, I don't know, flamboyant or colorful way, just in his mentality, I guess. But
like code of ethics or whatever. Yeah, his upbringing. Obviously, his backstory is weird as hell.
Of a serious, tough presentation, which I think will fit Maekar very well.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, I think he will fit Maekar. The other actor I knew, I think y'all know him from stuff too, and I think a lot of people do because he's a little bit of an older actor, is Arlen, Danny Webb. I think people know him from a lot of things. I know him most notably from the show Humans, the sci-fi show Humans, which is why I know you two have seen that show to remember him in it. And I've seen him in some other things, but he was also good in that.
Yeah, he's good. I'm glad they cast him. He's got that sort of fatherly, like, I'm the one who taught you things mentor figure, which is absolutely what Sir Arlen is. And I guess, flashbacks seem likely. Speaking of flashbacks, dreams. Daron, the drunkard who is a dreamer.
Look at those eyes, right?
Yeah, he's got the eyes. And I not only do I wonder if they're going to show us dreams, and I think they will, because they don't have a CGI budget to blow on regular dragons or White Walkers or whatever. So they could have his dreams be quite vivid. Now, what bothers me about this is that neither Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon has showed dreams in a way that I think are great. Like, I love Daemon's dreams at Heren Hall, but those weren't like fantastical. Those were just like waking dreams where he sees it like an individual person or the goat or whatever. When he had his vision, that was kind of cool, but I wasn't like in love with that. There were some issues with the portrayals of some of the stuff we talked about at the time. We don't have to rehash it, but in Game of Thrones particularly did dreams kind of badly. Like the way they handled Dany's House of the Undying was not great. Part of that was budgetary, I think, but part of it also was just chopping bits out of the story, maybe not knowing what to do. So I'm a little wary here. But they have laid more groundwork for it because there is more to do. They now have connective tissue between all the shows with the prophecy, and they can connect some of those dots this way. They've already got some of that set. So they're not working with empty space as much as they were in that regard. So, but still, I'm wary of how they're going to do dreams.
I just think they should use for dreams the existing footage they have more. Like they should edit and modify that.
That's a good idea.
I just don't. I'm sure there's maybe some technical reason or legal reason or some reason why they do not. But I'm super curious to know if they even considered it. For House of the Dragon and now for
just for saving money purposes, it seems huge.
Just for saving money, but maybe it's more complex than we think to get the rights. Or like even if it's all under it might be harder than we think to use footage from Game of Thrones in House of the Dragon, and it might be easier to use House of the Dragon footage in Dunk and Egg if they're set up for that. But I don't know.
I'm guessing that's not a problem, but you could be right. We could be surprised. I mean, we've seen other studios do similar things with their own stuff, like Disney took really old Star Wars footage to put into Rogue One, for example.
Yeah. Or I'm thinking about maybe like with the stuff X-Men, Deadpool, Wolverine. Speaking of that, has done. Maybe they use some old footage in the closing credits. I don't know. Anyways, I'm a little bit interested to read about it more. Yeah,
and and the point of bringing that up is that those were 40 years apart, so like the filming was so different, like the way it looked, the vibe and everything. So they would have to change it to make it fit the aesthetic. I don't think that would be nearly as much of a problem here because, like you said, House of Dragons only filmed a few years ago, Game of Thrones isn't that long ago, etc. But interesting to that. And another possibility that we should consider is if they're going to have Daron get some dreams, well, what did Maester Aemon say when he was close to dying? He was like, all my brothers dreamed of dragons. Like, he's maybe being a little metaphorical with some of that. But like, we could have Egg have dreams too. We could have maybe even an Aryan dream or a Maekar dream or Baelor.
Can I say my one criticism about the casting right now?
Do it.
I just think Baelor should have been mixed race. I just think he's too white for what, like, if they're trying to. Yeah, for a half Dornish guy, like, he can be half Dornish, but if you're trying to cast more variety, then, like, why not jump on that chance? And I think it just hammers the point home better about the racism that he felt. I don't think that you can see the prejudice he faced at this man. I don't think
if he doesn't look Dornish, it won't work as well if people say people have prejudice against him for being Dornish.
But I'm still holding out for the actor because I think the actor's still gonna do amazing and make me cry, and I'm gonna be very moved by him. But one criticism,
right? I hate to be negative because I'm pumped about all this, but what right now is a complaint about casting might turn into a complaint about changes from the book, because I can imagine they don't make him half Dornish or don't make a point of it. I think he's just going to have the same silver hair that all the other Targaryens have.
Oh, I don't think they'll do that. I'm going to disagree with you there.
I think he'll have dark hair, and I think he'll face discrimination even for his dark hair. But I think that would have hit harder.
I mean, they've already done it with Jace. Like, it's not like they won't have. Or it's not like they're scared to do that. or Jace and Luke and Joffrey, really, but those two haven't been as featured as much. But their prejudice against them for their hair color was certainly featured. And we had Jace and Luke going, if we only looked like Lord Corlys, we could be blah, 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 So, go ahead,
I want to
Sean.
make a comment on a couple of the things, actually. One on the dreams.
Sure.
I haven't really thought how much I like or don't like the presentation of the dreams, but spurring the thought now, it challenges that we and everyone is going to, pause play, and scrutinize every little instant, every little image that they give us. So they kind of have to be careful not to give too much in dreams, not to spoil their intentions or foreshadowing.
Well, if they're showing dreams of dragons, then they can't spoil it because it's already happened. They already know. We already know the dragons are going to come back in Dany's time and all that. So.
You're right. And maybe that makes it easier for them to show dragons in the dreams here.
Yeah.
But another factor is dreams in general are often kind of confusing and disjointed. So, I could see a lot of reasons why the dreams might be presented awkwardly. It might even be like an active decision to present them awkwardly. But
that could work.
I do have hopes.
That could work out, presenting them awkwardly. Like there's ways to, that might actually be a good way to do it.
And there is a lot of value in having these dreams exist in the show with dragons because it gives them something flashy for the trailers, right? It gives them, from a marketing standpoint, it gives some good imagery to put out.
That's very true.
The other thing I was going to say, and we talked about this, I don't know, a while ago when this was announced, we did an episode talking about or speculating on how it might go, how they might handle it. And I remember then, I'm still hoping now, that there will be a lot more flashback and maybe POVs outside of Dunk. And I'm maybe a little reinforced with that because the actor that they cast as Sir Arlen, I think, is the most credited actor of all the cast.
I think you're right. Yeah.
The most, 100 or more. Scores and scores of things that he's been in. And so it makes me think someone with such experience, they're not just going to be a dead body in the opening scene, right? I think they're going to give, whether or not we have a little bit of intro interaction between him and Dunk before they get to that burial, which I kind of hope they start on the burial, which means I think then we'll have flashbacks every now and then.
Yeah.
Maybe even the opening scene of each episode or something like that will be some lesson that Dunk learned from Arlen and give this actor more of a chance to show off his chops.
I'm curious if we'll see a younger Dunk or if all those flashbacks will be with Peter Claffey Dunk or if there will be flashbacks that do not have Dunk in them at all. I don't think so. I think they'll all be Dunk and if it's an Arlen flashback, I think, and except for later with the battle or something.
Yeah, season
like
2 they'll have to have Blackfire flashbacks.
Yeah, but I think for season 1, I think it'll be from Dunk's POV flashbacks with Arlen, and so maybe no young Dunk and just Peter looks younger there. I don't know. I
agree with you, and it's smart that you pointed out, Sean, that the book presentation everything is from Dunk's POV is obviously going to be different from a TV show. They can't have you just don't have things from one person's perspective in TV shows pretty much ever.
I think we would follow Egg, right? I don't think. It's I think we would see scenes with Egg in it and no Dunk.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe not a whole lot else, but some, occasionally. Maybe with Baelor speaking with Manfred Dundarian in private, or maybe...
It really depends on Ira Parker and company's stance on POVs. Ryan Condal said in interviews with us and with other people, they very much look at their show as whose POV is this being seen from? And
right,
this is
but
the target, you know what I mean?
But even though they say it's Alicent and Rhaenyra for House of the Dragon, but clearly there's a ton of scenes without either of them.
But I'm saying he says no, beyond Alicent and Rhaenyra, they still, in any scene, they're like, is this from Rhaenyra's POV of this Adam scene, or is this the Adam POV with Cease? You know what I mean? They have a character that they're entering the scene through.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
So we may or may not do that here. It seems like they're more likely to because we're talking smaller groups of people, probably more and more one-on-one conversations, more smaller groups of people, I think. So that would fit pretty well here.
So, for example, I'll just follow on what you're saying, Shad, however the show was being presented, right? Rhaenyra, Alicent, or whatever. But the scene, for example, where Kristen goes to Eric.
That is Kristen's POV.
Kind of blame him
it's
and send
not
him off
Aric's
in his
POV, right?
That was Kristen's POV.
Yeah, but it's
then
not
later
Aric's.
When Aric goes into Dragonstone, well, that's his POV.
Yes.
Even though he ends up with Rhaenyra in the scene, that was still his scene.
You're exactly correct. That's how when they're writing it, scripting it, they want to make sure they don't lose sight of who they're viewing the scene through, and it's not just like an omniscient top-down view of it, is my impression, which some TV shows do, obviously.
Absolutely. So now let's look at a few other things. Let's turn the page to the list of... Shay has another group of actors here. Next page, please. The list of unknowns, the ones we don't have. Yeah, here we go. So we have a bunch of characters who are actors who are in the show. We don't know what character they are. Some of them might be very unimportant, like Stephen Calvert, bottom right, not Bloodraven, but the second to last one. It just says Stormland's Knight. Like that's... We don't really care about Stormland's Knight. That's interesting,
Sorry,
but we're not going to
Steven.
talk about that. Yeah, sorry, Stormland's Knight. You're cool and all, but
And I put Joshua Bentoven, Bloodraven, and Hot D there because people are still obviously speculating, will this be the actor in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms?
Right.
Will we see Bloodraven early? Or even if we see him in just not till season 2, will this be the actor? So I included the shot there, but we really have no inkling whether he will be in it.
There's basically two questions there. Whether Bloodraven will be in season 1 at all. He's almost certainly going to be in season 2 in flashbacks, and in season 3 for sure because he's a character in the story. And the second question being whether this is the actor or not, which I think we hope for yeses on all of that.
I think he looks great. I would like it to be this actor. I'd rather them just reuse the actor than a fourth Bloodraven. But
Yeah, what, fourth?
Yeah, it would be the fourth. We had 2 in Game of Thrones, 1 in House of the Dragon, and if they have a different in Dunk and Egg, it would be a different fourth.
We had 2 in Game of Thrones?
Yeah, they switched the actor.
Oh, they did? It was Max. Who was it the first time? Just some guy?
Another guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I guess I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was a different guy.
Okay, so here's the other characters that are missing. Like, we know they're in the story, so they should be in the show unless something very big has changed, which is unlikely for most of these. So we don't know which is which. For example, Prince Valar, that's maybe the biggest one. He's obviously pretty important. He's got an interesting look, assuming they keep his look, Sean. This is he's the one that has the silvery hair, or rather the brown hair, but has the streak of silver through it. No, is it the other way around? The other way around.
Yeah,
he has a silver streak with
yeah.
the brown hair, with the silver hair with the brown streak, marking him as, 1/4 Dornish, I suppose. And that's, well, no, more than that, because his mother was Dondarrion. So yeah, 1/4 Dornish. And obviously he has an important role. There's also Sir Robin Risling. That's one of Dunk's 7. He's probably the least notable of Dunk's 7 because he just shows up with Sir Lionel's like, hey, I'm bringing this guy. And they're like, okay, cool. He's like, yeah, I'm with y'all. And that's kind of all that happens with him. But he's still got to be cast. He's still got to be in there, right? We're also missing Humphrey Beesbury. 3 Kingsguard, assuming they use all 3. In the book calls for 3 Kingsguard: Sir Donald of Duskendale, Sir Willem Wilde, and Sir Roland Crakehall. And they're in the trial by 7. They're 3 of the 7 for Aerion. So I would expect to see all 3 of them. I kind of doubt all 3 of them are in this picture, though. I don't see 3 Kingsguard in this picture, to be, you know what I mean? One of them is Stormland's Knight, one of them is Bloodraven, and 2 of them are women. So, and 2 of them are like children, basically, or one of them's kind of young. Maybe that L.J. Bennion is Prince Valar, the first one. He's the youngest looking one there.
I got to point out that 2 of the women, or the 2 women in this image here, are redheads.
Yeah.
And one of them has codename Rowan.
Yeah.
And so,
and her name is Rowan.
Rowan, codename. Hey, Sean, codename Sean.
What's Tansel Too-Tall's name?
I know. I think it's so funny. Tanzin, Tansel. If Rowan was Rohan, it would be very funny. But I want to tell you my theory here, and I'll give you the proof or the evidence I have for the theory. I would really like it if this was Rohan. I think she looks perfect. I'm not gonna lie. She's very short. I think she would be so good. I don't know that I think she is, and this is why. 1 second. If you see here, this image is from Rowan Robinson's Instagram story. It's her last day of filming for Night of the Seven Kingdom, and she covered her face with the red apple. I think she's a Fossoway sister or wife or something.
That red apple is very telling.
I think the red apple's telling. You look
it's
at
William
Stefan,
telling.
And when you look at Stefan Fossoway, he has red hair, and the Fossoway red apple, they probably have some redheads. I think there could be a couple Fossoway girls. They could both be Fossoway women. I just want to, that's what I think. I actually really think Rowan would be perfect as Rohan, though. So I don't know.
Yeah.
You know,
I was having hope beyond that actress being Rohan.
There's 2 of them. There's Abigail and Rowan.
But it's just evidence that they might, in the first season, introduce some characters from the future season.
Absolutely.
Including Bloodraven.
Yes.
You know, there's a lot of potential. It's, again, as we were talking about the POVs, I can imagine them giving us some scenes at court with Baelor and Bloodraven and maybe other characters that we may only get one other scene with them in the whole first season, but it still establishes them to appear in the future season. So,
just because people go hype, just to build hype and just because it would be fun.
Yeah. So I would like to see Bloodraven and Shiera and Rohan early. I don't know that I actually think we will. And I also saw a good theory from Brandolin in our Discord server who said perhaps one of these women is the Queen of Love and Beauty at the tourney.
The daughter, the Lady Ashford, the young maiden daughter. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, certainly. We also are missing Lord Ashford himself, speaking of, and Otho Bracken, who doesn't have to be in the show. He has like 2 lines, but I think he probably will be because the Bracken Blackwood conflict is mentioned. They set their tents up as far away as possible. It's discussed that this Otho Bracken got his nickname, the Brood of Bracken, for killing Lord Blackwood in a tournament. So that it seems like something they'll preserve and keep.
I wonder if some of these, I don't know, semi-key characters that we don't know about yet, is it because they're minor actors that only end up with a couple lines? Or I wonder if they'll surprise us with some cameo like Sean Connery showing up in Robin Hood or something.
Right.
Like, I wonder if it'll actually be some significant actor that they get to appear suddenly for one of these little bits.
Stormland's knight will actually be Hugh Jackman. Because going back to Rowan Robinson's codename Rowan, like, what is that? it's so silly. Like, hi, I'm Aziz, codename Aziz. Right.
It's funny because she could actually just be Lady Rowan.
She could be
of House Rowan.
Lady Rowan. Yes, the Rowans are very nearby. They're one of the most major houses near Ashford Meadow. So,
I still If Rowan played Rohan and Tanzin played Tanzel, I would be so happy though. I'm really rooting for it.
And the Rowans are very relevant to the situation in the second one, in the Sworn Sword. They're the overlords of the 2 houses in question. Like Rowan, both Osgray and Weber are vassals to Rowan. So so you're right, Sean. Like in terms of setting up characters for future seasons, that's a good call. Like bringing them in, and they're geographically relevant and close by, so it's a good fit. I like this line of thinking. What characters will they introduce earlier? What characters should have been introduced earlier? And even George will admit this. Even book purists will admit that Dunk and Egg, the Hedge Knight only, not the other 2, but Hedge Knight needs retrofitting. It's missing some of the backstory that was later established. Blackfire pretty much being all of it. There may be a couple other tidbits here and there, but that's the main thing missing and has to be addressed. So it's going to be somehow. It doesn't mean we'll see Bittersteel, but as Ashea indicated, we might see Bloodraven and Shiera if we get some scenes at court. Or even if we don't.
I would just love to see Egg's life, like a scene of Egg running about the court and what life is like for him. I don't know. I feel like there's a way to make that really good. Like, I would love to see how freeing it is for him to not be at court.
But like it would ruin the reveal if he's introduced that way. Like he would immediately know who he is.
I don't know if I think they're gonna keep the reveal. That's my other big question: is whether I think they will. Because I think
they will. Okay. I think they will. It just won't take very long. I think it'll be episode 1 where they reveal
into the first episode.
Yeah,
maybe.
I think episode 1 is when maybe even 2, but very quickly.
But if they do liberal flashback, show a flashback of Egg at court, what life was like for him, how much it sucked for him, really.
That would have to be the way they do it if they preserve the surprise thing.
The reveal could be at the end of episode 1, and episode 2 could start off with a flashback to him in court and all the oppressive adults controlling his life, and then you cut back the season episode, the rest of the story with episode 2 with him with Dunk and see how he gets to be himself.
Yeah, see Arian mistreating him or whatever.
Yeah, I would like to see Arian mistreating him. His sister's trying to give him potions and creepy Shiera. I don't know.
Little young Aemon? Can we get a little young Aemon? That would be so cool.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be really good. I think it would add to the budget, but I think they can justify that sort of thing because they're not spending as much on other things. So I don't know. I think that's what they should spring for.
And again, that's another way they could show some scenes at court with some of these key leader individuals they could be having some discussion, which could be about the Blackfire Rebellion or something, which is both central to the whole story, history of Westeros, but also to where Dunk ends up, right?
Yes. It would be a way to show King Daeron, too, because that's the only way we'd see him, I think.
Yeah. And then maneuver, just shift the camera away from these adults and their discussion to this little boy running around in the background and focus on him for a minute. Someone put me in charge of this. Someone underwrite this script.
Give Sean a production credit. Put him on the team. Yeah. Dom Tartaglia, shout out Folkwise podcast and Twitch streams. He says, people speculating they'll reuse the Brendan actor. Do you think we'll see King's Landing? I guess we kind of addressed that. So,
well, I think we will see King's Landing and Flea Bottom no matter what.
Like, Flea Bottom,
we will see that from flashbacks
call.
and Dunk and all that, but I don't know that I think we will see the Red Keep. The
streets of King's Landing. We might see inside and be told this is the Red Keep, but we might see the outside of it.
Yeah. So I hope to see the inside of the Red Keep. I know there's no way we won't see Flea Bottom and King's Landing streets. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense.
What can I take now? Is it a good time to do
let me lead you into this, but yes, this is exactly what I was thinking. So one thing that I feel very confident about, that Ashea feels very confident about, we'll see if Sean agrees, and I think a lot of you may already feel confident about, and will maybe feel more confident about after we go through this little section, is the actor playing Egg, Dexter Saul Ansel, is just a huge hit on social media. This kid is amazing. He is so fun. Follow him. Check his updates. He is just the cutest kid. He reminds me of Leo Ashton, the kid that played young Aemond, which is kind of fun to think about Aemond being a cute little boy, given how he turns out. But that kid was amazing also, but he was only on like 2 episodes. So like he kind of faded. He was out of our eyes kind of quickly. No pun intended, eyes. Haha. But Dexter Saul Ansel will be with us for many seasons. And just the way he's introduced himself to the world, he's so charming. All right, take it away, Ashea.
Yeah, I will mute you then. There we go. As you see, I put this picture here of little... He keeps sharing all this egg imagery. He shared lots of other cute things. Videos of him dancing and being excited to meet Peter, who's playing Dunk, and them like going out to hockey games. What I want to share today is all the egg puns that him and his family are sharing. Because it's also shout out to his mom and dad, obviously, who are sharing this.
Yeah, good parents. Good parents.
Good parents. And so, yes, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Right here, very cute. Him eating at breakfast or lunch something of some eggs. He looks so cute. Appropriate stationery for tutoring. And you look at his nice little water cup he has with all the Dunkin' Egg art and stuff on it. Ecstatic to see this at Birmingham train station for
that's Birmingham.
Birmingham, yes. For a cracking meal, Mr. Egg, and it's him, and he's his bald head. So cute. They shared this gif of Aemon.
Oh God! You can't make. I didn't think you could make this moment funny, but somehow they did.
They did. Yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, so sad, but so funny.
For people who aren't watching, it's when Maester Aemon is dying, and he's like, "Egg, I dreamed I was old." Like, oh, how can you make this funny? But they did.
Yeah. When he got the part, honored to be bestowed with the title of Egg, and it's a picture of him holding up an egg that says Egg and has the date on it. It was very cute. And so he's done lots of other cute moments. The videos and stuff I didn't care to share, but he's often dancing and happy and going on little excursions with Dunk. And actually, shout out to Peter Claffey's Instagram, where he's a huge Always Sunny fan. Dunk is like a big fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and just shares memes and like reels about it. Like I've not seen him share a ton of other show content except for Always Sunny. So I hope they get him on eventually. But anyways, I'm quite happy with our Dunk and Egg, in other words. I think they are just like perfect, precious, lovable.
This kid's probably a little too young to be watching It's Always Sunny, but eventually he can start posting some Danny DeVito memes. Like,
you want egg in this trying
times?
He's like, can you offer you me in these trying times? He can say that to Westeros. He's like, when the great councils, can I offer you a me in these trying times? Yeah. So those of you who appreciate our occasional Sunny references, they're going to increase probably when Duncan Egg comes around. Those of you who don't appreciate them, I'm sorry, because it's one of the two main actors of the show being a huge fan is not exactly going to tamp down our references to our own one of our favorite shows. I think that's all we have for Dunk and Egg, Night of Seven Kings for now. Sean, any last thoughts on that, or Shay, any last thoughts on it? And we can move on.
Just a quick note that I tried to look into all these different actors. The only one that I immediately recognized was from I've already forgotten his name, Spruill from Fargo. And then when I looked into it, I recognized the guy from Humans. But a lot of them have been in a lot of shows, and I think it's interesting. It makes sense as I'm looking into it. Most of them I hadn't seen the shows, or I hadn't even heard of them. But it's a lot of British shows, and so it makes sense. This is more of a English European cast and being filmed over there and everything. But it's on my list to see The Crown. A lot of them are featured in The Crown, so I imagine people who do watch The Crown might see some familiar faces there. And I guess Doctor Who and Peaky Blinders, you can probably guess the usual suspects there.
The Usual Suspects too? I like that movie. Just kidding.
That wasn't British.
You're right. It was not British. It was very American. Okay, let's talk about the show 10,000 Ships. So this has had an interesting evolution. It may be not its final form, like some sort of Pokemon, but certainly the latest news is very good. Let's backtrack a little bit, because it was originally, this is, like I said in the intro, this is like its third, or just past the intro, this was its third iteration. It was shelved twice with different writers, but now it's come back as an animated show, and it's back in development, being written by Ebony Booth, with Ebony with an I, Eboni, Booth. She has won a Pulitzer Prize for her play Primary Trust. She is a playwright. She went to playwright school. She went to Juilliard Playwriting Fellowship. She's a graduate of that. So she is basically has been on the playwright track since she was very young, and has just hit all the high watermarks through her education, and her first play won the Pulitzer Prize. Boom. Hello. Not only is it widely well regarded, this play called Primary Trust, it starred William Jackson Harper, who was Chidi in The Good Place, and he won an award for his performance in that. So that is pretty awesome. It's a very prestigious award, by the way, this Juilliard Playwriting Fellowship, or the Pulitzer Prize drama. Of course, the Pulitzer is already pretty well regarded, but the most famous recent example of someone winning that was Lin-Manuel Miranda for Hamilton. He won it in 2016. So this is the same award that Hamilton won, and that's obviously Hamilton is one of the most successful plays of the past several decades. So it's interesting, though, isn't it, Sean, to have a playwright writing an animated show? Especially given that there is a Heren Hall stage play that we're aware of that's also in development, but the playwright is not writing that one. So I don't know who's writing that one, as we'll see later. But it's a good thing. Obviously, it's not a bad, odd thing, but I think it's a very positive thing. Wow, she's obviously knows how to write dialogue and create mood and just create conflict and whatever. I don't know. I'm just naming off things that writers do. So I'm excited. Hopefully this plays out. What do you think?
I imagine a playwright also, part of the screenplays are, sort of, pun intended, setting the stage, right? And so, especially a show which ostensibly is going to be largely at sea, which is live action, would just be incredibly expensive and or maybe poorly presented. So making this animated, I think, is a very positive thing. I think it allows them to do a lot more, not have the same budgetary constrictions. I think, as Shay mentioned, they get to use some of the same voice actors for the characters too.
Big plus, yeah. Eve Best and Steve Toussaint. We're not sorry. That's 10,000. That's nice Sea Snake. I'm getting ahead of myself. But for Nymeria, I don't know who they would use for this.
Yeah, there wouldn't be.
I guess I'm getting ahead of myself too, thinking about the Sea Snake. But I remember arguing strongly that the Hedge Knight should have been animated. That way it's not as difficult to cast some huge guy to be dunked. They don't have to worry about egg aging up.
Yeah,
I'm going to trust that they manage all that as it is. But
I still wanted it animated too, Sean. You're not wrong.
But it does make sense for the Sea Adventures, which would be a much bigger budget than Dunk and Egg, that they would go ahead and make it animated. And I think it opens up a lot of other potential things that they could do with Martin's work. And so anyway, I think that the playwright, a Pulitzer-winning playwright, writing a story, maybe as a way, maybe as a demonstration to us that this will be more dramatic and character focused than action sea adventure focused, or at least the sea adventure could be handed off to animators who know what they're doing and will care about those actiony moments at sea because the playwright made us care about the characters and good dialogue and everything.
And I think, to be fair, most of the story is on land. I mean, the sea stuff is really important, but they spend most of their time trying to settle in new places and then failing. So I do think most of it will be these attempts to settle in new places, and then obviously you're right, the sea stuff is a big part. They have to go from place to place, and that's difficult and hard, and difficult and hard.
I guess I'm sort of implying by sea adventure that there will be a bunch of locations, kind of like we're talking about the difference in Game of Thrones, where you've got, the North and Dorne and King's Landing and all the places Dany goes, whereas Duncan Egg is just going to be at one castle pretty much. So,
well, I think you're right, except that it's not going to be shifting locations during one episode. It's going to be like, well, they're in Sothorios now. Oh, they're in they're back in the Rhine, if we're starting from the beginning, or now they're in Dorne. It's not going to be showing us a bunch of different locations at once, but you're right. The locations from like season to season will shift dramatically.
Can I say what I have here?
Absolutely.
Which is, okay, so we're going to say a few things in this episode about a conversation we had back in 2022 that gave us some kind of insider information about a lot of these projects, and we're not going to give away too much here for obvious reasons. But back in 2022, this is back when the previous showrunner, creator was helming it, Amanda.
Just to jump in, before House of the Dragon came out. 2022, but before Hot Tea,
Yeah, that is important. So before Hot D, we were told that the Nymeria treatment was bad. We were told that she was just didn't nail it, frankly, and they didn't think that it would move forward at all. And so when the news was announced that they changed who was writing it, I breathed such a big sigh of relief that it was actually had hope of moving forward now, because I think it was rather doomed for a while, and I had to keep quiet. Everyone was like, Nymeria hype, and I'm like, I was told that this is awful and I don't want it anymore. So now I'm pleased.
It got thrown in the Blood Moon category, basically. No, it's just not good. The idea is cool. Of course the idea is cool, but the actual... But that was the first version. Now we're on the third version.
Yeah, right? I think that was the second.
Oh, that was the second. You're right. That was the second version.
So I went through two versions that just weren't clicking. So I'm still hoping for Nymeria. And I think they made the right call by switching to Ebony Booth. Because I just Nymeria's story seems like it should be by a more diverse writing cast overall versus a white woman. It kind of just makes sense to me, right?
In a lot of ways, yeah, you're dealing with refugees. I mean, the Rhoynar are people of color. I mean, and that doesn't have the same meaning.
It doesn't have
the same meaning in that world.
It is a refugee story. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah,
that it's a diaspora and refugee story about these people that gets separated, and a lot of them stop in different places along the way, and so this whole their culture just really gets splintered up. In an interesting way. The loss of your history, the loss of your home. Yeah, these things are, they can be handled very well. And of course, if the show moves forward, it will presumably have additional writers and not just the one. We always want multiple writers for all the shows. We always want multiple perspectives on any show. It's always better to have a writer's room than a single writer. Well, not always, but usually that's better. There are exceptions. There's been some pretty awesome single-person written shows before. And of course, George R. R. Martin's books are single-person written, so there's always that. Okay, let's take a quick break, and we'll come back with plenty more shows to talk about, and plenty more news, and all that good stuff. Let's talk about our friends over at Hit Points Not Required. Ashaya, take it away. Sure, I'll take it away. Do you like Critical Role and other similar TTRPG channels? Hit Points Not Required is a channel dedicated to all things TTRPG. They have a mixture of actual play streams and chatting centered around adding more role play into your RPGs, and they have charity streams every Monday at 9 Eastern. Back in June, every week was the Trans Lifeline charity. Back in July, they did charity streams for the Epilepsy Alliance of America. August and September will be
or R, the Palestine Children's Relief Fund, PCRF. Join their community and follow them at twitch.tv.hitpointsnotrequired, all one word. If you're looking it up on YouTube, it's not all one word. A couple
That is twitch.tv/hitpointsnotrequired, to be clear. And also, you will see Chuck as one of the members, and that's the person who made my Muppet Tully suit and his own and our other friends. He was Kermit Tully himself. All hail Kermit.
Yeah, all hail Kermit. And of course, Chuck also didn't make these maps. Michael Klarfeld made them, but Chuck printed them for us and created the way for us to hang them so nicely and switch them out so easily. So
if you are on the edge of supporting Hit Points Not Required and giving them a follow, we would extra appreciate it. It's all part of the history of Westeros, a community and family.
That's right. Chuck is a big part of the fandom, our community, and a friend of ours. It's funny, I used to live 3 blocks from Chuck for many, many years and didn't know it. We met each other after I moved away from that spot. So it's such a small coincidence. Small world, y'all. Midtown Atlanta. Also, while you're over on Twitch looking into Hit Points Not Required, why not make sure you're signed up to follow us at History of Westeros on Twitch. That's twitch.tv History of Westeros. And we stream every 6 p.m. on Friday. Okay.
I got to put a plug in here real quick.
Do it.
Much of a sci-fi fantasy advocate Chuck is, he and I both agreed that The Bear is the best show on TV right now.
He even did a bear cosplay. Yeah, he did.
Nice.
We talked for like half an hour about it,
So Look for Lek, this is something interesting here, says, someone who worked on The Long Night as an extra told me it was really racist. Like a huge black ogre type actor fighting in a cave with a bunch of white dudes. Not my editorial. That's what he said.
And we've heard similar statements from other people who worked on it and saw stuff from it, that it had just problematic vibes. They just kind of ham-fisted.
Huh.
They, like, the Children of the Forest were just racist, and I don't know. I've only heard horror stories about like how bad it was.
No wonder, and they didn't let anyone see it. If it was actually racist, then they can see why they wouldn't show it. Like we're not showing that. Damn, no, we don't want that on. We don't want that stink on us.
To be clear, I don't think anyone's saying anything is deliberately racist here. They're saying that they did not realize what they were depicting on screen and the like racial undertones of it, which is racist. But I don't think it was malicious or deliberate. Or I think it was just, careless, reckless, ham-fisted.
Now, one thing that's interesting to me about this that might be a connection is that when we were in Belfast, I had a taxi driver that was a huge black man that said he was on this show. He was in the pilot. He filmed it. He showed us the newspaper article because he was from he was
a Polynesian man.
Polynesia. He was from from the place with the water named after it. The island that has the water brand. Fiji, yeah. He's from Fiji. Yeah, I couldn't think of the name. Yeah. So he's from Fiji, this huge man with a cool accent, and he was driving our taxi, and he said he was like a bodyguard in the show. And like, well, when I think huge black man, I'm like, well, that guy was a huge black man. He was really big and cool dude. We chatted about it and we were like, well, how random. We're in a taxi with a guy that was on this project. Of course, back then everybody was amped up for it. We thought it was going to be a show
because we were in Belfast.
Yeah, like that's where it was filmed.
It would be very random in Atlanta to have our driver be this man.
Yeah, right.
Belfast, I'm sure a million people in Belfast probably 10% of the people have a story about like them working on or knowing someone who works on one of these projects.
Yeah,
I'm not exaggerating.
You're not wrong.
Still feels a little random for a guy from Fiji to be a taxi driver in Belfast.
Yeah, and for us to get into his taxi. Yeah, it was pretty cool.
But once you're a man from Fiji and you're in Belfast, you're gonna get hired for film projects there. Right?
Anyway. All right, let's talk about Nine Voyages, aka the Sea Snake, and that is a point here because it was originally called the Nine Voyages, and I think maybe it was called the Sea Snake and then back to Nine Voyages and now back to the Sea Snake. I'm forgetting, but anyway, the title for now is the Sea Snake, like my shirt, which says the Sea Snake, and this is from Fox and Brambles. Thanks, Ashton, for the shirt. We don't have a lot of updates on this one, but we do have the most important update, which is that it is still in development. It hasn't been shelved. It hasn't been canceled. It hasn't been abandoned. It's still in development. So given those two pieces of news together, there's probably not a lot of progress on it. But there's also probably just some things we don't know yet. Because if it's in development, we don't know who the writer is. And we should know who the writer is, but we don't. It used to be Bruno Heller. And it's kind of a bummer that he's not the writer anymore.
That's the creator of Rome.
Yeah, that's the creator of Rome. So he's got big chops. But it was also shifted from live action to animated, which also makes sense for the same damn reasons we just described for Nymeria. It's a heavily, even more nautical than Nymeria, probably. More sailing is implied in this show than even, although fewer ships, but more sailing. So shifting that to animated is a good decision for that reason, for budget reasons, and as we jumped the gun on discussing getting our wires crossed, they can still use people like Steve Toussaint and Eve Best for voice acting, which is fantastic. That's a really nice plus, and something in the pro column for this one.
Especially when you see how passionate Steve and Eve both are.
Steve and Eve,
yeah,
yes.
that is their names. But they are both really into the franchise and the fandom and being part of it. Like their characters, like I feel like they will be really happy to like continue voicing their characters. Like of all the cast, I think they are going to be like extra happy about it.
They do have quite great chemistry together.
And I want to think that there's maybe, I don't know, a leg up for this show because it has this connectivity to House of the Dragon, right? They built this sea snake character up, so now a show about the sea snake.
They've shown his artifacts and stuff, you know? Like, we've seen the artifacts that he's brought from the 9 voyages.
We want to see, where did he get that?
Yeah, they have things that they can build a story, an arc, an episode around, just built in. So, yes, we know more than Golden Empire, for example, which is the next one we're going to talk about.
So Bruno Heller, of course, maybe this wasn't clear. The reason he's not the writer is because it was switched to animated. And you might not assume that because it switched from live to animated that it also switched writers. But that is the case. Bruno Heller's never done an animated show, and we're pretty sure they came out and just said that it's not him anymore. So we don't know who the writer is, which is odd. But it's possible they don't have one yet. They may be still looking for a writer. They've agreed to change it to animated, but haven't found someone to start writing it yet, or to pick up the work that's already done and can carry it forward, or start all over. Who knows?
Yeah, they might have some writers, but not their head writer.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they might just have some junior writers with some notes from George, or working on whatever Bruno had started. Who knows? Yeah, I really don't know. Some of the stuff I don't know how it works. You know, like. Does Bruno's work just get tossed in the garbage can? Does he own it? You know, I just don't know. Did he still get paid? Yeah, probably. But
yeah, I would say at the very least he got paid for the work he put in.
I think so. Yeah.
And I'm not sure on how much they keep their treatments and continue working on it. I think they do, unless they're like, this is awful, we are scrapping that.
Yeah, like you broke like some contract violation or whatever, something they think they could get out of. Yeah.
I imagine that's the reason they have agents, that they're the reason there's a guild and negotiations and contracts. I'm sure those details have got to get hammered out.
And that's why sometimes they still get a writing credit, because they're like, well, Bruno Heller, like the treatment he did, we used a lot of that. We used 50% of that, so he is going to get a writing credit still, even though he wasn't on the writer's team still.
Or even if it's only 10%, but the 10% he did was an outline of the whole story that they followed, and someone else filled in dialogue or whatever, but I can still see how he made it.
You see a lot of this come down in like Star Wars drama. Actually, we've seen some of this play out in terms of like, well, what should someone get credit for when they've changed who helms it multiple times, and that's been kind of messy in some other franchises actually.
Yeah, like certainly there's like sticking with Star Wars, the original screenplay for the third movie, Rise of Skywalker, was dramatically different than the one written by Colin Trevorrow. You read the two, like the other, it's been released in comic book form, so you can see what the original version was written before they completely scrapped it and did this other one. And but that's not necessarily how it's always going to be. Sometimes it might be kind of similar, you know, there might be some overlap, you know. Anyway, the secrets of production and writing behind the scenes. We're not always privy to that stuff. So not much else to say about the Sea Snake for now, but we remain positive on it. There seems to be a lot of developments, but I wouldn't say it's anytime soon. The Golden Empire. This is in a similar boat, pun intended, to the Sea Snake and Nymeria, in that it is animated. The difference being here is that it's pretty much always been framed as animated, as far as I can recall. They never really brought it up as a live action show. I think it's maybe a little too obscure to go live action with something that would be expensive. So animated allows them to go there without the huge costs. Because ET would be crazy to try to show, I think.
I have the most mixed feelings about this one because I think it could be really cool, but also I think why not just do real Chinese mythology, like like instead of a whole Golden Empire thing. I don't know. Probably
because it's expensive. I don't know.
Yeah, it just kind of makes me wish that they would fund like an original project that actually uses more. I can hope that the team they have for the Golden Empire will actually be very knowledgeable about Chinese and other Asian mythologies and like incorporate real elements into this because it should be rooted in our real mythologies.
Yes.
But like anyway, so I'm like, the jury's out for me. I just kind of wish they'd invest in original content a little bit more sometimes with this.
Yeah, and to be fair, we don't know that they have it. We just don't know. O'Shea is wary. She's not judging what's for certain because we don't know. We have very little information on the show at all, other than, again, an update at Bubonicon just a few weeks ago from George that it is still in development. So once again, the best possible news other than it's going forward or it's getting a pilot. It hasn't been shelved. They're still working on it. They still think it's viable, at least for now. So that's good. It's a shred of news, but it's positive.
Can I say the other little tidbit now about other animated shows?
Do it.
So also in 2022, our source told us about 2 other animated shows that they had in development, and neither of these like subjects, like the topic of these has not been released or leaked. Like I have not seen anyone say what these other 2 animated shows would have been about, and one of them is real exciting to us personally, like as a very cool topic. The other one is also pretty cool. Both would be animated. They brought up the Gendry Tartakovsky's Primal as a comparison for the animation style and studio they were trying to like work with and have it be similar to. But yeah, I'm dying for someone to say something about these projects so we can talk about it. But regardless, there are more animated projects in development than they even have said.
And I think this is maybe makes some people a little wary that that this fandom is eventually going to get Star Warsified with just so much content. To be fair, even Star Wars has decided to slow down how many shows they're making. But I wouldn't worry about that too much because, I mean,
it's about having them in development, not about actually getting them all out there too, right?
Right, exactly. And I follow the Star Wars fandom not nearly as closely as this, and they don't have like dozens or 20 shows in development. It's not their ideas are a little more structured and like safe, right? Like they are trying to keep it to the characters that they know. Here we see a lot more effort to expand the world, to make it larger, which I appreciate, because this is one flaw with Disney Star Wars or just Star Wars in general is they can't seem to get away from this one era. It's 25,000 years long. It's a whole galaxy, for God's sake. But they're just like, nah, Skywalkers. It's all about the Skywalkers.
They just want to get lightsabers on screen.
Yeah. And what's amazing about that is
Skywalkers are still like clones. It's
one of their most
clones
successful yeah, that's right. One of their most successful shows did not have lightsabers in it. Andor, right? Of course Andor was not actually that successful in terms of viewership. It was very successful in terms of critical acclaim. Yeah.
It was objectively, I think, the best Star Wars show. It's not my favorite Star Wars show, but I think it is the technically best and most
critically acclaimed.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was the most adult, most real. I mean, I think it deserves all the acclaim. It's just, for me, it doesn't scratch the Star Wars itch of what I crave. Yeah. But I still like acknowledge, like, it is the best. Like, I kind of feel like that about a lot of Marvel movies sometimes, where I'm like, I think this Marvel movie is technically the best, but my favorite is still this one.
It can
like,
be different.
I enjoy a different
you can have a critical opinion and like just my personal. It just fits my vibe so well.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about Andor. I think it's that and not that for me. But I think you loved it, Sean.
I think it's my favorite and the best.
Yeah. You are the least. You like Star Wars the least of the three of us, but yeah. So I would have expected you to like that.
My favorite movie, my number one all-time favorite movie, is Star Wars: A New Hope.
Hell yeah.
But the Star Wars universe, I don't love as much as
Right.
I love that one movie.
Gotcha.
But then Andor blew me away. So like,
Blew me away, but it still wasn't.
It
didn't have the whimsy and magical quality that I like in a Star Wars. Anyways, we're not talking about Star Wars.
So we want to wonder how this is going to be preserved. Like, what's the vibe? Like, one thing there is a Star Wars aesthetic, right? You can tell, like, it's the used tech is kind of the best way you can describe it. Like,
and the music.
A lived-in world.
Sure. Oh, I'm talking about visuals only, but yes.
It's meant to be a lived-in world that isn't just sanitized, and it has existed for eons is part of it.
What is the Game of Thrones vibe that would appear in an animated show about Yi-Ti? It's a little easier to do with the Game of Thrones vibe for the Sea Snake or Nymeria. Even that would be a little bit of a challenge.
Well, I think they have to set the tone with a different animated series first. That's how I think it works. Is I think if you set the tone with Sea Snake or with Nymeria, which is has more connective tissue, then you connect the Golden Empire to those shows. Do you see what I mean?
Okay,
I like that idea.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And of course, the other factor here is whether it will lose something without, full acting. You still have voice acting, which is very powerful, very strong, can communicate a lot, especially if we have familiar voices like Steve and Eve. I love that Steve and Eve because that's that old silly like homophobic joke. It's Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve. No, it's Steve and Eve. There's no Adam at all here. Well, actually, there is Adam.
Like their ship name
Valarian.
is just Steve.
But Steve, your ship name is the Steve Snake. The Sea Steve. Got the Sea Steve. Sailing the seas of Steve. Okay, so the Conquest. That is, at this point, the most likely next show after this Night of the Seven Kingdoms. Now, when I say after, I might mean during, because this Night of the Seven Kingdoms, who knows how many seasons that's going to run. George has written notes for 12 different Dunk and Egg novels. Obviously, he's only published 3. But they could use those notes for more if they go that route, which, let's be honest, they will, unless the show is somehow a failure. They're going to milk it for everything they can. That's the fact here. That's not a positive, but it could be partly positive because, again, to the Star Wars model, maybe not all the shows will be good, but you'd rather them being made than them not. I think most of us would because they might be good. And, well, if they're not made, we definitely won't get good shows if there's nothing made, So I'm usually try to be positive about these things, even though acknowledging the possibility that some of these won't be very good. So the Conquest. Not only is it the next one that's likely, it's the most likely live action show as well after Dunk and Egg, because maybe one of the animated shows could actually come out before this. Because as far as when the show would happen, it might not happen till like 2030 or something like that. It could be a lot sooner, but I'm guessing it won't happen until after House of the Dragon runs, because it might even fall under the House of the Dragon umbrella, which is how we were first told this would be done. Again, referring to our unnamed source close to George R. Martin, we were told before Hot D came out, again, before House of the Dragon's first episode dropped, we were told that House of the Dragon would shift eras after 3 or 4 seasons. This was before it was confirmed to be 4 seasons. Even back then, that seemed to be the vibe. But before it was confirmed to be 4 seasons, this is what we were told. So if you're going every other season, which they're definitely on that track because the Dragons are just too much production intensivity to do it any quicker. So, okay, 2026 for next season of House of the Dragon, season 3. 2028 for the final season. 2030 maybe for the first season of House of the Dragon, Aegon's Conquest, or whatever they're going to call it.
Well, that makes a certain amount of sense. I have this hope that we could get 2 shows a year. I don't think that's
well, Dunk and Egg is still going to be there, so yes, because I think that will be an every year show because they don't have the dragon intensivity.
It's only 6 episodes per season.
Huh?
There's only 6 episodes.
And there's only 6 episodes, so it's easier to film too. Yeah, good point.
And they can't let the actor for Egg age up too much.
Also true. Very important. They can't. Yeah, skipping every other year would be kind of wild for that. With that in mind, and not just him. A lot of those other people are pretty young too. Probably wouldn't matter as much. It's probably him that matters by far the most, but not only him. That will be interesting to see. We were also told there was a chance that after Aegon's Conquest, they might do something like the time of Aerys or just another era under the Targaryen rule.
Yeah, it was again, this was told to us about under the House of the Dragon banner, and that was back in 2022, so who knows how things have shifted, but yeah, it definitely has been on their radar to do other Targaryen eras, and Aerys was named next.
Now, we haven't heard any other peep about the Aerys idea since then, so maybe that won't happen. And that could be linked to what you're saying, Sean, like if we're covering Aerys, that's Robert's Rebellion, right?
Rebellion, yeah.
Like it would finish with that. You might start like all the way back at like Summerhall when Aerys like was, because he was there for that. And
if I had my druthers, we'd go House of the Dragon, Dance of the Dragons, House of the Dragon, Aegon's Conquest, House of the Dragon, Robert's Rebellion.
Cool. Yeah, and that it might be the other one they might want to do is Blackfires, but they might be covering so much of that with Dunk and Egg that they just decide.
I don't get why. I just don't care about Robert's Rebellion at all. I know a lot of you do, and you're one of them. And I'm like, I'm with Aziz. I'm like, this is a huge world with huge amount of eras. And like, I would rather see like a dozen other shows before that. But that's just me being a hater on that. So, and also we're getting the tourney at Heren Hall stage play. Like, I feel like that's the interesting part of it is the tourney at Heren Hall stage play part. I don't really care about the war and the campaign and all that. So I feel like we already are getting the interesting part.
Man, there's still I'm kind of in between both of you, I suppose, because there's definitely some parts of Robert's Rebellion that I think are worth exploring, like the Tower of Joy and Ned and Ashara, and what the deal with Oberyn was, and Dany's flight and from Dragonstone. There's some parts I would like to see, but I don't know that a lot of them aren't super mysterious, or they just would be kind of fun to see on screen, I guess.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I'm not excited to see the battles Robert fought in the Rebellion. I'm excited to see the build up to it. I'm excited to see the dilemma Jaime is going through, and Barristan. Sure. As they watch Aerys murder people, but have this loyalty sworn to him. That to me, that's the intrigue that I want to, the drama that I want to see.
Yeah, it would be good. I get where Shay is coming from. Is that it's not that she doesn't like it necessarily. It's just there's other stories.
We do pretty much know that story.
It's lower priority.
Yeah, we kind of know that story.
Yeah, exactly.
And we even have the tourney at Heren Hall stage play, which again, like to me, the meat of what I want to see is there. So I'm like, I feel like that itch is scratched.
But how accessible will the stage play be to the general audience?
It won't be, but it'll be accessible to you and I because we will travel to see it. So I can be selfish here and say I'm fine with this.
As long as we're clear, Shay is being selfish.
Most people will not be able to travel to New York or London, and maybe they'll do another city. I think maybe they named another city, but like most people cannot do that, and they maybe eventually they'll release it like how they released Hamilton on Disney Plus or something. But I wouldn't even gamble on that. I think you're right. It's very it's a classist, like plays are a classist thing. A huge amount of the world population has no access to this sort of thing. Never will, so you're not wrong about that, but we will be going.
Yeah.
I will fly wherever this is.
No doubt we will be seeing it, and we will report on it. But but I think getting back to the point, which was that's not necessarily a reason for them not to cover it on TV. The play, I don't think, really covers that for the reasons you said.
It's a scratch, but not mine. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk more about the Conquest. We got a little off field there. Good, useful topic, but let's bring it back in here. The current writer for Aegon's Conquest, and this has been pretty active. We're told by the Hollywood Reporter in February 2024 that they're pushing forward with it. It's not, it hasn't reached the stage of pilot or green light, but it is, I don't know, yellow light or greenish yellow. It's getting green, somewhere in between yellow and green. I don't know what that means. The current writer for it, and he's fun to follow on Twitter because he's multiple times, he loves to use the manic Kermit typing meme whenever he's working on this. And so there's several times where you can see him like he's working. It's like, he's working on the Conquest show. There's the Kermit, which is so perfect because, Kermit Tully and all that. His name is Matson Tomlin. He's a Romanian guy, younger dude, but has a lot of credits already. He's a writer and director. He's done some producing. So he's seems like a very type A type person. He wrote Terminator Zero, which is his only TV show. I think it's done pretty well. He's a co-writer for the Batman Part 2. He also wrote Batman the Importer for DC Comics. So he's written comics as well. And he has written the movie Berserker, which is BRZRKR in all caps, which stars Keanu Reeves. So his credits are pretty cool. And this is interesting, though. Like, let's consider the character of Aegon the Conqueror that we've discussed. We covered him quite a bit, didn't we, Sean, with Valar Reretus and all that. And we talked about his personality is a little inscrutable. He's a private man. Powerful, very capable, very competent, but keeps to himself. That's Batman! So is he I am of the night? Is Aegon the Conqueror gonna be like have this deep voice and sound? I think there's gonna be some Batman vibes in this version of Aegon the Conqueror. Mark my words.
This is the second time Batman has come up as part of the history of these creators. And I will say, I despite having become a little, jaded and dismissive of all these superhero movies, I was really impressed with the Batman. I thought it was pretty well done. And I remember when all these superhero movies started to kind of take off and take over the film industry, thinking that it made sense. And I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, because a central part of film creation is writing a storyboard. It's already done. That's what a comic book is.
Yeah, you're right. A comic is a storyboard. That's a good point. Excellent point. Here's a question from Ranabir Mitra. Hi, Aziz, Ashay, and Sean. Hope you are well. I'm reading rumors/ideas of the Conquest being a self-contained movie of battles ending with Dorne and the Letter. Post which the reign of Aegon I and the Sons of the Dragon being a 4-season series ending with Maegor's death and Jaehaerys' ascension. What do you think of this proposal? Any other suggestions or rumors that you're hearing or that you're allowed to share? I'm so excited for Mattson Tomlin being the writer. I loved his Batman the Imposter comic, and his work with Matt Reeves for the upcoming Batman 2 movie has all of us in the Batman fandom super excited. Well, that's good to hear. I'm not deep in the Batman fandom at all. I don't know much about it. I just happened to catch this vibe of Aegon and Batman having some things in common. Bruce Wayne Egon. Yes, that's his name. Bruce the Conqueror. And so I'm glad to hear this. This is positive, because I don't have this knowledge from my own experience. But I really don't know. Given that, I don't know. His stuff seems good, but I don't know it personally. So it's hard for me to really weigh in. And I don't think either Ashay or Sean has a lot of experience with these things either. You guys aren't big into Terminator or Batman. But
I will say that what I would want or hope for isn't necessarily what everyone else wants. I think much like House of the Dragon, that it would be a drama, and once or twice a season there would be a battle scene. That we would get this huge buildup of Aegon assessing the land, realizing the need for unity among the kingdoms, showing Heren as a dictator, and you get 3, 4, 5 episodes with no real action, maybe some hints, maybe you start off in the middle of the Battle of Heren Hall, and then you go for 3 episodes of flashback build up to that, or that way you can get some action in there right off the bat. But I don't envision Aegon's Conquest as being an action show. I think it's a drama that has some action scenes in it. And I'm super excited for it, however they present that. Yeah,
because the battles aren't going to have a lot of conflict in them until you get to the Conquest of Dorne. Then they do. But the regular, unless we're seeing from the sides of the defeated, or from their point of view, then might be some conflict. But if it's just Aegon just keeps winning kind of easily. We've all agreed in advance talking about this, that part wouldn't be terribly interesting. It might have some spectacle to it, and they're going to definitely want to capture some of that, because the burning of Heren Hall and Field of Fire, that's too spectacular to not show. But those are exceptions, just particularly spectacular things. But other than that, it's got to be more about the characters in the story.
Yeah, I think they're better off showing, if in terms of talking about who the POVs are for the people being attacked, being conquered, for them to be POVs. But I don't think they're going to go that way. I don't know that I have my hopes up for that, but I think that's what would be effective.
Yeah,
and that would be a way to keep Aegon's personality and intentions kind of mysterious.
Yeah, I would. Anyway, that's what I'm rooting for, but not what I expect.
Yeah, it might be. I kind of agree. Maybe we shouldn't expect that, but I do think it would be an interesting way to do it. And maybe they want to show the Targaryens more, have them be more mysterious or inscrutable. That might be interesting. That might be a way to make this whole show's presentation more interesting. Well, let's hear what Mattson Tomlin had to say, because he did a brief interview with Westerosies. Westerosies, shout out to them. That's a Twitter account that does a lot of great coverage on Twitter. And Westerosies is Westeros with IES at the end. And here's the quote.
It starts with what George has done. I've now gotten to spend quite a bit of time with him, and there have been a lot of pinch me moments of just kind of going through Fire and Blood, highlighting passages and asking him, what did this mean? What is this? What I think it is. You know, sometimes really grilling him, going, I don't understand what's happening here. And other times going, I think that it could mean this.
That's what you want to hear. It's just talk. I mean, this doesn't mean he's written a good script, but this is absolutely what you want to hear. Like asking George lots of questions, getting detailed answers, digging deep into what these characters are doing and their thought processes and whatever else. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. I'm excited about that. I really appreciate that line. Even again, words are win, but those are good words. And his quote continues right here with more good stuff.
But it's really taking that text and treating it like it's real history. That's one of the things that my approach to it was, to that Fire and Blood is written like a real history, and these things happened. We know the history of Alexander the Great. We know the history of Napoleon. We know what the battles were. We know a lot of the people who died. We know in some cases what was said or what might have been said, but we don't know everything. We don't know all of it. We kind of have these flagpoles that tell us this is how we march through history. But then, also, there's that great quote that somebody much smarter than I said, history is written by the people who want. And so then there's that as well.
Again, that's what you want to hear. I mean, these are good points. He's saying, I mean, it's sort of straightforward, but it's absolutely what you want to hear. He's giving himself room to play with the gray areas there, but sticking to the flagpole, the milestone moments that are important to keeping George's story and world building in place. It's like the Maester test, right? TM, trademark, the Maester test. If Maesters would have noted it, it fails. So you can't mess with that. If the Maesters would have recorded it, it should have made the history books. You can't change something that should have made the history books. But if it's like a dream or a personal connection or supernatural stuff that they wouldn't know about, then you can squeeze that in there because it fails the Maester's test. The Maesters would not have written about it. Thus, it's safe to include, being general about it, right? So I'm real happy with that. And one more quote, actually, from him. The final bit of this quote, let's hear that as well.
For me, it's about making sure that I respect George and I respect the text. And then also, it still has to be a dramatic story. Those characters have to go on a journey. They have to change. They have to go from a beginning to a middle to an end. Figuring out how to do all of that with the clues that textbook has left for me and go, okay, I'm going to interpret this very real history and try to make it a really vivid show that hopefully people love and don't hate, doing the best I can.
But he doesn't want people to hate it? That's strange. So yeah, again, good comments. I love what he's saying here. Hopefully this isn't just talk, but I'm pretty optimistic. So yeah, indeed, we do worry about or wonder about how they can create conflict. Obviously, the Targaryens just pummeling Westeros into submission is not very interesting. The dream is a big part of this. I'm sure they're going to work that in. It's obviously something that came from George. It's already part of House of the Dragon. We wondered if it's going to be in Dunk and Egg. It probably will be. The dagger, we'll see. That's something they'll do. You would think Egon will make the dagger, forge it. By the way, I forgot to mention this. I wonder if the dagger will be in Dunk and Egg. You would expect it to be with the king, but Baelor having it wouldn't be a stretch because he's the hand of the king and he's the next king. He's the heir to the throne. So that wouldn't be a weird thing to have the heir having it instead of the king. It would be a slight, that's fine. It wouldn't be a big deal. And they wanted to show, if they want to keep it on screen, that's probably the best way to do it.
Well, here's my question is, I think if the prophecy was still being passed down at that point, yes, makes sense to me to give it to the heir and have the heir hold it. I think if it's divorced of that meaning, I am curious how, what their perspective will be on the dagger, because I think we predict them losing the prophecy by this point and them not having a greater meaning to this dagger by now.
I feel like they've already lost it. I mean, Aemon is already carrying it around having no
True.
idea what it means.
You're true.
It's just
right.
a fancy Valyrian steel dagger. It's just kind of boss. It looks cool. So, I don't know. It was Aegon's dagger. They don't know that it was also a supernatural thing, but it's still kind of a symbol of Targaryen rule.
Exactly. I was going to say it could be sort of like, the heir gets Dragonstone. They also get this dagger. That could be, aside from the prophecy.
Changed it around a little bit. Yeah, absolutely. Because that would just be a tweak to Targaryen traditions and not a big one and one that would fit. So.
And it would keep the connective tissue that they built. If Baelor has it, and then in the final scene or whatever, you see that Maekar now has it or something.
Yeah. Or, however they want to do it. So... Other things that would be interesting that could potentially be in this Conquest show, getting back to that, is like Visenya and Rhaenys and Aegon. Just any conflict between them, interpersonal. I don't know if it'd be super interesting to have like love triangle stuff. I don't think we need that.
I think Rhaenys and Visenya are in love, actually. That's what I think. No, I don't know. I'm just like, I actually would really like to see the Visenya-Rhaenys dynamic, especially.
Me too. And I want to see how Orys Baratheon mixes into all this. They're going to have to, they will have to cut away some of the mystery around him and be like, yes, this is the bastard son of Aegon and Visenya and Rhaenys' father. Or not, right? They're going to have to plant that flag. And they can't be vague about it like the sources are, because we're going to see these characters on screen. Which means we also potentially have a lot of other awesome lore stuff. Like their parents and grandparents. Like, what else can we learn about Aenar the Exile, Daenys the Dreamer, dragons? Like, what were the other dragons that died before this time? They may name them. We might get more information about Valyria, other kings and queens of Westeros at the time, too. Like, if we're moving away from the Targaryens, like, tell us more about Heren the Black. Tell us more about the Lannisters. Tell us more about the Gardeners. We're going to have the Gardeners.
Yeah.
That's really cool, right? I mean, heck, there's some houses that are extinct that will play a role in this that's going to be pretty neat.
And Steve in the chat says, let's see if Aegon was sterile or not.
Oh, yeah, give us that plot line, right? That could be interesting.
Here's the thing. I hadn't been thinking of it in terms of viewing the Targaryen invasion from the perspective of the Westerosi lords.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were talking about that a minute ago, and I realized that could be a way to keep from having to flesh out Aegon's personality, which is something that is kind of unknown, that we don't see him on screen very much, right? And that might also be a way to not tell us who Orys Baratheon is. He's just a character that came with these Targaryens. The Lannisters don't know who the heck this guy is. And
it's true.
They, maybe George has decided and told the showrunners, but maybe he hasn't or doesn't want to, and that's a way that they could avoid it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. That's a good call. Like, I wonder if they've considered that possibility, or if it's even an idea that they're considering.
Like, what if the whole show was really the tragedy of the Gardeners?
Those poor hands. So, and what is the stopping point of the show? Like, is it the completion of the Iron Throne? Is it the coronation at the Starry Sept, which doesn't include any Dorne stuff, right? Other than them threatening Dorne and Dorne saying, get out of here. You fired, unbowed, unbent, and broken, yo. All the way to the death of Aegon, like after he's king for 35 years. I mean, would they do that? I kind of doubt that, but there's no obvious stopping point. I think, like, we're not going to spoil it, but we kind of think there's a fairly natural stopping point for the Dance of the Dragons. I don't see what it is here, though. That's a trick. That's a challenge for this show, is to come up with a proper ending, because I don't know that it's maybe not that straightforward.
I think George is facing that same problem with the main series.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Now, something I should point out, y'all, if you're wanting to keep track of these shows or look into them more, a lot of them have their own page on the Wiki of Ice and Fire, the one run by Westeros.org. So you could go to the Sea Snake page and see a lot of the stuff we've talked about today. It has some updates and some of the past stuff that's no longer relevant but was true during the process. So just a note there, in case you wanted to learn more or be able to follow up. Quick note here, apparently or definitely dead shows that we have heard nothing on since a long time. They've been canceled, and shows do occasionally get revived, but as far as these list goes, there's no news, so they're probably dead and could be dead forever. Blood Moon, of course, that's definitely super dead. Doom of Valyria hasn't been mentioned since 2018. I wouldn't say never on that one, but there's certainly no news on it, so That would be a very production-intensive one. It might have to be animated, and boy, are they working on... Boy, would they be working with very little to get that going, you know? The Snow show is pretty darn dead, and I don't mean in a way that, like, Jon Snow came back from the dead, so will this? Nah, I don't think so. They couldn't find a way to make the show interesting, apparently. They couldn't find a way to continue the story in a way to make... Yeah, they just couldn't do it. They tried, and they were like, yeah, this isn't working. So I don't know. I don't know that they're going to try again.
I thought it was so interesting back in 2022, again, in that conversation we had when we were told Nymeria treatment was bad. We were told that this person was surprisingly thought the Snow treatment was good. Like they were like, I was really skeptical. I thought it was going to be really bad, and I surprisingly liked it, but clearly it still just didn't stick the landing completely, you know. But I thought that was interesting.
Absolutely, yeah, that was interesting because we were surprised to hear that. We're like, really, that one of all those shows, you think that one's good? But
they were surprised to say it.
Yeah, it wasn't like fan. You know, they weren't just like a fan or biased or whatever. In fact, they were, if anything, they were biased against it to start. So yeah, good. You're right. And we mentioned the Spear Carriers / Flea Bottom show. We haven't heard anything on that. I guess we could call it shelved.
I think this is the one that's like one of the ones that's closest to George's heart. Like I think he most like wants, like he just wants a comedy type thing, a thing set about the lower class and the working class, and he brings it up with such warmth. And like even then, I don't know. I know it's shelved, but I think he's still. I believe that he wants a comedy in the repertoire. I think
it's something that could happen in the very longer term after a lot more dramatic shows come out. Like once the verse, the GRM verse is more established. Because like even like Star Wars, again, going to Star Wars and Star Trek, very established fandoms, they both have comedy stuff. But it took a while for that to come out. Unless you count the Star Wars really, holiday special.
Yeah, Star Wars is really only does it for Lego Star Wars. Yeah. I don't know that they've done really other comedy, like straight comedy stuff, except for the under the Lego.
Some of the
Star
stuff
Wars
for
umbrella.
Children is got a lot of humor in it. Like I don't watch it, but it's definitely, since it's for kids, it's not all serious, right?
Yeah,
you know?
True enough. But they're all animated still, though.
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
They haven't done a live action like
comedy one. Yeah, you're right.
Sitcom or
Star Trek has done Lower Decks, which is
Marvel
that's their version
and DC
of that.
Have done stuff.
It's also animated.
It is. Yeah, you're right. It is also animated. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. That is animated. Yeah, that's super interesting. I feel. Yeah, is there a big franchise? I guess, again, Marvel and DC have done it.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll see. Maybe that'll be a thing they do here. But I think either way, it's a longer-term project. I would, of those four that we just named, Blood Moon, Doom of Valyria, Snow, and Spear Carriers / Flea Bottom, I'd say Flea Bottom is the one that maybe has the best chance, but not anytime soon.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Heren Hall / Iron Throne Broadway stage play. It's nicknamed the Iron Throne right now, which is kind of an odd nickname since it's the events of the tourney at Heren Hall. The Iron Throne isn't even going to be seen in it. Kind of, I don't know why they're calling it that. Either way, it's pretty exciting. But while there's been no major updates, there's no indication of issues either. It's just kind of plodded along. Like it was originally like slated for 2023, then 2024. Now it's 2025. So,
but he did have a meeting recently with the script writer and director, he said, right? But he didn't give names.
He did name names, so they're keeping that under wraps a bit. Again, it's funny that we have a playwright writing Nymeria, but not writing this. But it probably is a playwright writing this, just we don't know who it is. When it debuts, apparently it's going to be in London at West End, because it's a Broadway stage play, and that means London and West End or New York. That's it, right? I think those are the only two Broadway locations.
I think when it was first announced, they had grander hopes for how many places it would open, and I think they have stripped it back in terms of like what they have committed to, saying they would. Maybe they'll change it, but like you said, I think when they first announced it, they said 3 locations, even not just 2, and now they're only saying 1. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. It may not even happen in New York. But right now, I mean, who knows? Like, if it does well, it would certainly open doors, and maybe they consider doing it. But though it's not a TV show, it has, I think, the most familiar elements in it. In general, like Ned, Robert, Lyanna, Mad King, Jaime, Howland Reed, Rhaegar. I mean, everyone was there, right? Benjen, Brandon, Ashara Dane, Arthur Dane, Barristan Selmy, Oberyn Martell, John Connington, Gerald Hightower, the White Bull, John Arryn, Lewin Martell, Mace Tyrell, Elia Martell, Bronzion Royce. It's a monstrous list of important characters. and plot lines. King of Love of Knight of the Laughing Tree is what I meant to say. Queen of Love and Beauty. I got those two mashed up. Ned and Ashara's relationship. Brandon and Ashara's maybe thing. I don't know. Rhaegar and Barristan, meaning Barristan's regret that he didn't beat Rhaegar, which would have forestalled
secret romance.
The secret romance, yes. Like, if I would have beaten him, he would have loved me. No, that's John Connington. Jaime's getting his cloak and then being sent home. Like, that was a big deal. The vibes of Rhaegar versus Aerys. Like, is Rhaegar trying to, like, undermine Aerys? Is Aerys paranoid about this and that? Is Varys going to be there? Cersei, no, Cersei wouldn't have been there.
Okay, cool.
She was gonna have been and then didn't. Because Tywin refused to go.
Okay,
yeah, and
cool.
Cersei was too young to go herself. She was 15, or 16. So yeah, so Cersei was not there. But she's like one of the only big names that's not there, along with Tywin. It was a 10-day event, 7 days of competition, celebrating Lord Went's daughter's name day.
It's gonna be a 10-day play too. You're gonna really live.
I was just thinking it for like TV series material. Like that's a lot of stuff to put into. Even a 3-hour play, I guess. I don't know. Yeah,
right. Yeah. So you're right. There's a lot. They might have to drill some of that down a bit. Maybe not have quite as many characters, or maybe just not have them all speaking. He's like, hey, that must be Oberyn Martell, but he doesn't really have a lot to do here. It's just cool to have his presence, you know. And of course, not long after the tournament, Heren Hall is the abduction and eloping of Lyanna, and just before it is Howland Reed going to the Isle of Faces, presumably, and all this other just stuff that maybe won't get included, but might get talked about throughout the dialogue of the play. I mean, obviously we're not going to see big sets. It's a stage play. So anyway, so that's pretty exciting, even though, as we discussed, it may not be as accessible to a lot of people. But whenever it happens, we will do our best to cover it thoroughly and let y'all know, like, transmit the information to you all.
I'm not going to lie to y'all. People will bootleg this.
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
If you're willing to be a pirate about it, you will find a bad recording. But like, the people are passionate about this enough. I have no doubt that like you will see it visually.
You can't stop things being recorded these days.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like, unfortunately for some, but I think ultimately, fortunately, because they should just release their own versions. So I think it's perfectly moral if you cannot fly to London or New York or whatever to watch a bootleg.
Yeah.
So. Yeah,
you won't hear us complaining about that. Okay, so House of the Dragon Season 3 and beyond, unless y'all have anything else to say about the play? Okay. So filming is to begin early 2025-ish, according to Ryan Condal. That's what we expected. It's likely out in 2026, first half of the year, because we're looking at roughly a similar timeline. I believe it wasn't a full 2 years between Season 1 and 2. It was pretty close, though. It was like 21 or 22 months. So if we have roughly the same timeline, then 2026, slightly earlier in the year, maybe back to an April release rather than a June. In fact, that would be exactly 2 months earlier, which is back to a more familiar Game of Thrones release period, which also I think lines them up better for Oscar consideration, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that might be part of what their decision tree is.
Not Oscar. You keep
Emmys. I always do that every single time.
But the Emmy cutoff is May 31st. So I think they should have a show that airs in April and May.
Yeah.
And that should be their priority if they care about the Emmys. Because I think the numbers speak for themselves. Every year that Game of Thrones was in that window, they did very well in nominations. And House of the Dragon has not. And people want to say it's for other reasons. And I guarantee you, it's the timing in the year. You can't not say that watching something a month before you nominate your Emmys doesn't influence you. I'm sorry, like, people are influenced by what's recent.
Yeah, Sean, you've covered the best pictures a lot, so you probably have noticed this in a different way, based on like which ones do well, which one is the most recent. There is a bias towards that, don't you think?
Absolutely, and it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy too, because people understand the idea that, like, if you see two movies or shows or whatever, and let's say they're approximately equal in quality or whatever, they're both 9s, okay? But you saw one last week and you saw one last year. You're going to be talking about the one from last week. It's just what's on your mind. It's what's buzzing with other people. And so,
you talked about the one last year when it came out. Yeah, you've already talked about it. Yeah.
And so the filmmakers who care or intend or expect to get nominated, they usually wait till the fall to release their movies. And the Academy knows that they do this, so they watch the movies from the fall to nominate. And they don't watch the ones from March or January or whatever. So there are some exceptions, but it's rare. It's maybe one a year came out before the summertime. And I don't know if they've ever won. I don't know if before the summer ever has ever won.
That's fascinating.
Like not in modern times anyway.
Yeah, so the effect might be even stronger than Shay was indicating. Like she was saying it was big, but it might actually be like massive. Like
again, look at House of the Dragon's Emmy nominations.
Yeah.
They do not do well, and it's because they air right after the nominations
It's the
close.
worst possible time.
It's the worst time for Emmys, which is why I think HBO is just betting on other horses. They know they have other shows that will sweep the Emmys.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care about having it be House of the Dragon.
They just want it to be one of their shows. They can't all win all the awards. Yeah,
they want it to be one of their shows. And so I'm curious if they'll switch it up at all.
It is worth noting House of Dragon has still gotten a couple of nominations despite that.
Oh, yeah.
It's still gotten in there.
It doesn't
but
do
Game
well
of Thrones
for
was like 20, 30 nominations.
It was crushing.
5, 10 wins.
Yeah,
that's my point. Is like, it's always going to do well for creative arts. It's always going to get the technical nominations and stuff. But when you look at the acting nominations for House of the Dragon, it is a stark comparison to Game
You mean
of Thrones.
Targaryen?
Yeah. What did I say?
A stark comparison.
Oh, I see. But it is just a big difference, and I think people don't give enough credence to the timing element of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, confirmed, as we've been saying forever, that season 4 is the final one. We don't know yet whether season 3 will also be restricted to 8 episodes. And this is where I want to address the financial situation of WB. They released their financial statement. It's awful. They're so in the hole, just like so many of these other streaming companies are, at least vis-a-vis their streaming. Some of these companies are so huge. Obviously, they have other earning, like Disney obviously also makes money from their parks and other things. It's not all about streaming. Amazon obviously has a bajillion other streams of revenue. Like, it's countless. They're unbelievably large. But my point is that we're looking at a long period of time here. We're looking at season 2026, 2028, maybe 2030 for Aegon's Conquest. The financial issues bogging down Warner Brothers aren't going to be permanent. It will change. It might get worse, but it probably gets better. They can't just like, I mean, if it gets a whole lot worse, they might just cease to exist or something like
wow,
that.
Big shock, just mashing together all these brands and products into one umbrella.
Warner, Disney, Amazon.
Warner Discovery, whatever they're doing is not great for the brand.
No.
And also means that the loss is for everyone, whereas probably HBO Max or whatever maybe didn't have as much of a loss, but because it's all within one umbrella, I don't know. I think they're silly, but I think there's a lot bigger things going on that have nothing to do with creativity and art or anything.
And of course, they also are considering, this is a rumor, I don't know how realistic it is, or maybe it's just should be treated as a poor rumor, but it might have some real legs, is that they're considering selling HBO off because it's one of the few profitable things they have, which seems odd. You would want to keep the thing that's profitable to get you out of the hole, but if they can't make the shows, if they can't finance the shows the way they need to, then that would be a reason to sell it, which clearly happened this time with the House of Dragon losing 2 episodes. Last of Us has lost 2 episodes. Probably some other shows have had cuts as well. No one wants that. I doubt this is a long-term thing, but it may linger and affect other shows. Well, let's talk about George R. Martin here as well. Now, earlier this year, he had a post kind of slamming adaptations in general. A lot of people were wondering or thinking maybe he was talking about House of the Dragon. I didn't think so at the time, because the punchline to that blog post was how Shogun was an exception. He was like, so many adaptations. Now, a few months later, he wrote a blog post just, a couple weeks ago, and he was much more critical of the show. So maybe he was making veiled criticisms of House of the Dragon back in that original post. I'm still not sure. Not super important, because we have other things that are more clear here. Now, in this blog post, he criticized the lack of Maelor and the butterfly effect it would have on the rest of the plot, including revealing what Ryan Condal had told him what some of those plans would be. So he kind of dropped some spoilers on the blog, which is probably why that blog post was deleted.
I want to be clear, y'all. These are book spoilers, not just outline spoilers, because I think he didn't realize how ambiguous he wrote Helena. In the blog, in his book, and he was very definitive in his blog post. And I think if he reread what he wrote, he would be like, "Oh, damn, I was more ambiguous with this than I realized." Yeah,
I agree. So and that's another point here. George, like we said, he deleted the post and has since made new posts, just moving right past it, basically, kind of just like, I said what I said, I deleted it. Forget about it.
I think it's a bit of a warning shot to HBO.
Yeah, it may have been a bit of a warning shot. Like he was like, "Look, I'm unhappy, and I can cause problems for y'all. Like people are not gonna. It's definitely gonna be dramatic and suck up a lot of news if the creator is verbally and vocally unhappy with the show. Like that's a big deal. Most authors will just keep their mouth shut. But George is, he's not those people. He's not clearly not.
Most authors don't have the acclaim and influence that he has.
He has more clout. You're right. That's the thing. And also, he's older and probably he's just like, I don't have as much time. I guess needs to change now, or it's not. He also lamented the fact that he cares at all. He's like, maybe I shouldn't just care. Maybe I should just focus on the books and just not care about the shows. A lot of people are like, yeah, George, you absolutely should focus on the books and not care about the shows. Yes, please do that. Do that. Yes. Anytime George starts a sentence with perhaps I should just focus on the books instead of whatever comes next, the answer is yes, George. Yes, just do that.
I should clarify, I didn't read that blog post for a number of reasons.
Yeah, you don't want those spoilers were in there. You shouldn't read it. Yeah.
But also, I was fairly confident that he probably said a couple slightly negative things. And the response everyone has is, George hates House of the Dragon. I just know it's being blown out of proportion.
You're absolutely right. The fact that he felt comfortable being negative about it all is the bigger deal. Because specifically, he criticized very little. The actual specific criticisms were very mild and minor and not very broad. But he also hasn't weighed in on the second half of the season, which I don't think he was terribly happy with. And we've heard from some people that have spoken to him personally that verifies this. But beyond all of this, George has had a bad year, a very bad year personally. And it's made him ornery and angry and lashing out. We all get it. We've all had that way. We're just not famous like him, so when we lash out, it isn't news. It doesn't get posted 1,000 times across 1,000 different news media sites saying, "Oh, George R. R. Martin drama, let's talk about it. Hey, we get clicks out of this." You're right, Sean. Anytime he says anything, people are going to take it and run with it, and it's going to go through the rumor mill ringer, the telephone game, and get blown way out of proportion.
It's going to be presented as clickbait.
Yes, because because clickbait works that way. Yeah, we don't have to explain how clickbait works. We all know that. So, go ahead, Sean.
The other thought I had when this story was coming out was that from the interview that you guys did with him, that he said that he kind of expects or plans for there to just be book canon and show canon. And, that hopefully they'll be pretty close to each other, but it's already happened. You got to accept it. So that added to my surprise that he had these complaints / certainty that he wasn't really complaining very much. It was being blown out of proportion. So.
Well said. And we'll have to wait and see what else he has to say. Maybe he's gotten some more perspective on it. Maybe he's not quite as mad as he was. But yeah, he's just had a hard year. COVID, he got COVID. He's had one of his best friends die. And he's had friends die almost every year for the last 7 to 8 years, if not longer, because, he's in his 70s. His friends are old, and that's what happens when you're that age. It's not great when you're having friends die, and that's going to absolutely throw off your creative process. Not only that,
but... also had that drama with Worldcon too, right?
That apparently is in much better shape now. It did, but that was only recently it's improved. Yes, that situation is improved. I wouldn't say it's fixed, but it's better.
It's also different every year because each Worldcon is a different committee. So yeah, there were issues at the last two with the committees, but it's my understanding that the next two, or at least the Seattle location, is more friendly with George.
We also, by the way, got the scoop that referring to that Worldcon drama, that George really did fill out the proper paperwork.
Yes, we were told they did fill it out. They tried to blow it off like, oh, George didn't fill it out. He's too good. No,
he did actually.
He did. And we have a friend who applied for a bunch. Like they applied for a bunch of wild cards panels. They're affiliated with Wild Cards and a fan of it, and a very I don't know. They have a good resume. Like they're not like inexperienced is my point, right? They put full availability for Worldcon panels. Like they had every time slot they were available, and they got rejected with no reason. And this person is confident that it is because of the Wild Cards Association with George R. R. Martin, and it is quite irritating. But again, future Worldcons are not the same committee. It is based on location. So.
Yeah, so don't be mad at Worldcon, the group that's running it next year, because they're not going to have anything to do or very little to do with the group that ran it this year. So it would be blaming the wrong people. So yeah, Worldcon doesn't work that way.
Yeah, so if you're in the city or an area where Worldcon is in the future, please still go. It's a great convention. Yeah. We highly recommend it. It's totally variable on who's running it.
I didn't mean to bring that up as an attack on Worldcon, just pointing out a thing that George would usually look forward to and have fun with was kind of taken away, adding to his bad year. Right?
Yeah, right. Like if he's losing friends and his friend, like that's part of his community. Worldcon, he's been going since the 70s, right? Like that's, like I haven't been doing anything since the 70s except breathing, and even that was only like partway through, you know? Like.
And then you add on that he had COVID during that, and I think he was in a bad mood, grouchy, and he kind of put his foot in his mouth in a certain way. I think it was effective probably in a warning shot to HBO, but ineffective in that he spoiled a whole bunch of fans, myself included, because again, I would have liked to theorize, I'm not going to say about it, but I would have liked to theorize about certain elements for years to come, for a couple of years, and I could have theorized about it in the books forever. Yeah. And now I just know what he intended, and like, okay, fine, but like, I when we have a spoilery episode, I can talk about it, but that was my biggest disappointment. And he didn't even actually really follow through on what the butterfly effect would mean for other characters, because it would have an impact on characters like Daeron Targaryen and other people, right? And he kind of didn't, so I just, like, if you're going to go there, then, like, really go there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt he was angry when he wrote it, and maybe that was good for him to vent, and now he can move on. But we'll see. We'll continue to keep an eye on it. You know, you all know that we have some direct connections to George, and can learn things through that way. And we'll pass that on to y'all.
I don't want to drag this on too much, but you know, it is kind of my role to be. You know, I haven't read the books. I'm watching the show for the show, right?
Yeah.
And so
I hope you haven't read that post, or at least stopped at the spoiler
I didn't read the post.
Okay, cool. Just checking.
Read it warned me that it had some spoiler stuff in it, and so I had become aware, you know, even before this, you know, months ago, whatever, that Aegon did have another son, and that wasn't in the show, and I wondered how that might play out. I think we even talked in one episode about the implications of succession and so on and so on.
Yeah.
But at no point with all this have I had the thought, well, now the story's ruined.
No.
Like,
right.
You know, and I'm sure probably, you know, a huge percent, 70, 80, whatever percent of people watching the show don't have these expectations from the books. You know, that Martin understandably has these expectations from the books too.
Yeah.
I don't feel like now, you know, maybe next season some weird stuff starts to happen and it doesn't make sense to me. And it's because they're trying to make up for the fact that, Daeron or whoever wasn't there. I don't know. But point is, I'm reserving judgment for how good this show is. It doesn't matter what Martin said in that blog to me.
Yeah, because even if Martin's right that is Condal's plan and it's not a good plan, it doesn't mean that's permanent. It's not set in stone. It hasn't been filmed yet. Like, they haven't started filming yet. He might change his mind. Yeah.
And it's an outline.
Yeah, it's an outline.
He says the thing like, they give no reason for X plot point. I'm like, well, it's an outline. They don't always give the reason.
Yeah, maybe they have plans to expand that point, but haven't yet, you know? So yeah, so it's premature. I agree with you. Like, I'm not arguing against George. I think he has a right to be upset with how his creation is handled, even though he sold the rights to it and gave up that right. I still think it's fair for him to be not happy with how it's portrayed on screen. It's his creation, you know, like he's entitled to his opinion. But yeah, but we're not just here agreeing with everything he says about it because, well, some of these things aren't so simple. But yeah, let's move on. We'll come back to that when there's new information on it. Our last topic for today, History of Westeros goes to DragonCon. I've been going to DragonCon since the 90s, Sean off and on as well. And it's great fun, but more recently, the last few years, it's had a much better presence for a Song of Ice and Fire stuff. It's always been a great cosplay convention, but didn't have a big Game of Thrones presence. But lately, the last few years, it's been improving, and we are part of that. A shout out to our friend Britt, who ran the Ice and Fire shoot as well. But here we go. We've got some cool photos of all the times for y'all to have visuals on your screen. This is it. Because if you aren't looking at the screen right now, you're missing a picture of Grey Worm kneeling before the Muppet Tullys. And they are Muppet Tullys. They are dressed, they are actual Muppets. We got Elmo in full armor. We got Oscar in full armor with a trash can. It's a trash can armor with a fish bone instead of the fish for the Tully sigil. It's genius. Then we've got Grover. Then we got Kermit. And they are fly. They are awesome. Now on screen, we have the World of Ice and Fire shoot. A part of it, you can maybe see a couple dragons. You can see me, dead center, front, bottom, as the Red Kraken, Dalton Greyjoy, which is cool because he hasn't been seen on screen yet. I'm cosplaying a character that has never been seen. I'm covered in blood. I've got my Greyjoy shield. It looks pretty cool.
So, Shea, you're one of those Muppet Tullys, right?
Yeah, I'm Oscar Tully himself.
And Aziz, you're also in that picture with the Shea as Dalton Greyjoy.
Yeah.
Who took these pictures? It's a really great shot.
That is a good shot.
Good photographer.
Let's give credit to Sean Pink for taking some of these photos.
Yeah,
yes.
I think this picture in particular was a Sean Pink photo. I did conscript Sean, and basically, in order for me to agree to Chuck that I would be a Muppet Tully, I had to know that as History of Westeros, we would still document the World of Ice and Fire shoot. And look at me in that Muppet suit. I'm not gonna easily document it yet. You're muted, Aziz.
You are meant to be taking pictures
I
of.
unmuted you. You have been muted.
My bad. Yeah, you are meant to be photoed, not be a photographer when you're wearing that.
I actually still took a lot of photos that day because I was like, I still just couldn't help myself.
Because you're hardcore.
And I had to take pictures. But no, Sean did step up and take lots of pictures, and I think he now better understands the plight of the convention photo shoot photographer and all these things going into it, and it was fun hearing his complaints because I was like, I've been there, Sean, I've been there, I know how you feel. But otherwise a very well run shoot for sure, and quite fun, and we had good weather for it. It wasn't too hot.
Yeah, you can see a lot of silver hair there, a lot of Targaryens obviously. There's quite a few Aemons and Rhaenyras and Daemons, not too many Aegons, a couple of Helenas, and some dragons, and a couple other people. There's one silver-haired person in there that's Black Allie Blackwood, which is our good friend Allie. That's actually her name. And she is silver-haired, but in all black, so she might kind of look like a Targaryen from a distance. But I love another character that hasn't appeared on screen yet that's being cosplayed.
I know Allie would be so offended if I told her this, but I'm like, she should just cosplay Dana the Defiant and be a Targaryen with her silver hair, and a Targaryen who likes to wear black and who wears she is basically. She can just
do both. Why not both?
I know. Anyways, Allie would be mad at me if I told her that she should be Dana the Defiant, but like she should. She just should. Anyways.
I've got our friend Amber Targaryen Greyjoy standing next to me there with her floaty, which is a good thing to have when you're at sea, right? You don't want to. I see. You can wear all your armor, all your heavy armor, like a real. But you need a float afterwards.
And let me tell you, to look for Lick here, who says, "Oh, I thought it was near ATL, and I was thinking that suit must have been horrid." It is in Atlanta. It was hot, but like it wasn't. The sun was not beating down at us, and I had a fan inside my suit and a fan that I like kind of jerry-rigged, like put up kind of near my face to a handheld fan.
You said it was good weather, and I guess it wasn't pouring down rain, and it wasn't over 100.
Yeah.
But I was just wearing, a t-shirt and sneakers, and I was hot. I was sweating hot. You guys, you had like these Muppet like felt costumes, And then armor on top of it. You guys, people with wigs and all this stuff.
You.
Yeah, it just must be miserable.
Look at her hand.
This is how hot and sweaty I was. One of my hands, Chuck just kind of messed up and didn't put a hole. Like the hole wasn't in my right hand. I could take my left hand out. I couldn't take my right hand out. And look at how pruny my fingers got. That was from sweat. So yeah, it was hot, but it kind of gets to like, as long as you're continually hydrating and you're just like, my lot in life is to be sweaty. I cannot stop the sweat. Like, you just kind of accept it, and it's not bad, you know. But like the selfies I have, my face is very red from the heat. Actually,
now you all can see the strategy of me doing a shirtless cosplay because
yes,
it was so much cooler. Literally, yeah. Yeah, here I am with Catwoman, the standard. Red Kraken and Catwoman, they go well together. She messed
him up. She scratched him all up.
Yeah, she's the reason I'm all torn up there. That's the 12 wounds that the Red Kraken suffered were all from claws.
Regarding Aziz's cosplay, because we have some questions here. He is Dalton Greyjoy, the Red Kraken, so we thought the best way to visualize that was to show him very bloody.
Because he got his nickname from emerging from the fight after revenging his uncle's death in the Stepstones. He emerged from the battle with bleeding profusely from a dozen wounds. So this is I have a dozen wounds.
So yeah, this is our roommate Taylor actually did this makeup VFX, this work on him and did an amazing job.
Yes, she did.
It looked really good. The back, I wish I had a better picture of the back here, but he had cool scars on his back too.
I did. And I was unable to wash it all out with one shower. It took multiple washings to get rid of it all.
And this is a shot I love, a zoomed in shot of a bunch of Aemons and a Meemaw Vhagar, which cracks me up with the pearls and the granny glasses. It's just too funny to me. I love this.
And notice how all of those Aemons are women.
Wait, no.
Oh, one of them's a man.
One of them is a man. But
you're
the
one leaning forward. I couldn't tell.
The one leaning forward is a boy.
Yeah.
But the rest are all women or non-binary or whatever they are. But they're not men.
And none of them are you. And you also dressed up as Aemon.
I did also dress up as Aemon. Women be loving, campy Aemon. He serves. I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was probably the third most popular costume for women. Was Aemon after Rhaenyra and Alicent.
And here's a fun shot. This is characters that didn't appear in the show, but the funny thing is that Rhaegar and Lyanna did appear in the show, but those two were like, we're doing it anyway.
And so did Oscar Tully, but not like that.
I'm not in that.
I'm sorry, not Oscar. I meant to say Grover. No, Grover didn't appear
has not been in the show.
You're right. None of those three were in it.
Yeah,
right.
This is the other thing I was going to say that's really funny is that they're like, okay, and everyone who has it, and then I'm standing there like, oh, my family.
But they're without you.
And then I noticed after the fact that Rhaegar and Lyanna just did it anyways, and I was like, damn, I should have just lied.
So we have from left to right, we have Elmo, Kermit, and Grover Tully. Then there's Rhaegar. Then over to the left again, we have Patchface, which is cool. Gender flipped Patchface. He looked really good. Then you have me as Dalton Greyjoy. Then you have, wait, is he Bloody Ben?
I don't think he's meant to be Bloody Ben.
Is he Willem? I think he's Willem, actually.
I don't know that he's
because they had the banner.
Willem.
They were actually carrying that big Targaryen banner.
No, but I think I don't remember if he's meant to be like a Tytos, Blackwood, or exactly who John chooses to be. I think Tytos has that cloak, though, right? Isn't that the cloak? I mean, it might just be a Blackwood cloak, you're right. But I tended to think that he was Tytos because of the cloak.
The reason I thought he might have been Willem or was because he and Allie carried the Targaryen banner, the same Targaryen banner that outed them as, following Daemon's orders, right?
Yeah, but I still think he just did. We should ask John himself.
We can ask. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's why I guessed it. So then we have George R. R. Martin, obviously. Then we have Amber, who is
another Dalton
Greyjoy. She's got blood too. And then Lyanna and Black Allie.
And this is us with the George R. R. Martin cosplayer. He ended up joining our Facebook group too, so that was nice.
Yeah. Shout out to our friend Michael, who is, shout out to all four of the group there. But Michael in particular had the heaviest suit there. He's the Elmo. That armor was like really heavy.
It was real leather armor. Mine was foam armor and very light.
Still made you sweaty, but not as heavy. Yeah.
And Grover had a big pillow pouch in his tummy, and that made it much warmer, like it insulated, and was me and Kermit, myself and Chuck had the best suits, but the worst eyesight, the worst visuals from our holes, as it happens.
People were very pleased to see the Muppet Tullies. There were a lot of like, oh, just like, oh, that's so funny.
It was a really educational cosplay, because you would hear people go, why are the Muppets here? And then someone else go, well, in George R. Martin's Fire and Blood,
yeah,
was how it always starts. And it was just, I loved us having an educational cosplay there. And I loved the idea of the Muppets invading like another shoot, because the Muppets do that sort of thing. This was a really funny cosplay. This Damon cosplayer who had, they had a sign that said, leave Heren Hall to help my wife, the true queen, secure victory. And then like in video, and it's in video game text, like a text-based video game. Play with ghosts all season and get bodied by a teenager. I am the teenager that bodied him. So that amused me. I loved that.
What else do we have? Oh, look at this one. Yeah. So we got to hang out with John Picacio, who was the artist guest of honor. He's a friend of ours. We've known him for a while, and we got to have some drinks with him at a party, and then we attended his panel. And then we went to his booth and got this great picture, which displays, just look at the vividness of his work behind us. I forget there's people there, because I'm just like, look at that art behind us.
As you might have noticed in the previous picture with John, I was in a Targaryen shirt, and Dom in the chat is in a Skelly shirt, and we had our other friend,
I got my
Sean.
Golden Company shirt there.
I made that for Aziz. That's a Golden Company shirt. We were going to a skeleton-themed party that night, so hence Skelly and hence Golden Company. Here's my Brat Aemond, for anyone who's a fan of Charlie XCX, Brat Summer, etc. This is a reference to Charlie XCX's album Brat, which has a chartreuse album background and a very distinct aesthetic that I thought would be fun
for the Greens. Yeah, the Greens.
It's the Greens, and Aemond is Brat. And the craziest thing, I should have grabbed a picture actually, there was a second Brat Aemond at the con.
Someone had the same exact mashup idea.
Yeah, they did a cloak with Brat written on it in bedazzled green gems. It was really cool, and they had a ribbon. I should have grabbed a picture of it, but I was really thrilled to see a second Brat Targaryen. But also on regarding John Picacio, he was the artist guest of honor for the whole con, and we went to his panel, and he talked about an upcoming project that we will definitely chat about and share when it is properly announced, but seems like a really nice project. And he was really kind, and he gave us this print, the print of the others, the White Walkers, out of the kindness of his heart. Very touched by that.
Yeah, of course it's signed.
Yeah.
So yeah, John made some of the most iconic Song of Ice and Fire art of all time. He did the first Song of Ice and Fire calendar. George specifically picked him for it, literally handpicked John for it. It wasn't from a list of authors or artists. He's like, I want that guy, and the rest is history. John Picacio is perhaps the most recognizable book artist for A Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah. But he's done so many other things too. He's not only in A Song of Ice and Fire.
He's done Dune. And very notably, Conan, Elric, right?
Oh yeah,
he's done so. I mean, the list it's like Star Trek. He's really known for Star Trek stuff too. He is just a really sweet person.
Yes, he's a really good man. Yeah, he's done so much to promote. He's Mexican, and he promotes Mexican art. Created this whole program to help promote different Mexican artists and get their art in more places and shown, and it's been a very successful program. It's called Loteria, and
I think that's
that's the name of his other. I'm sorry, I'm confused. It's the Mexican,
the Loteria,
Mexicanex initiative.
Yes, the Mexicanex initiative, which George did help to fund. He was partially, he was a supporter of that. That's how we were familiar with it. Is that at Worldcon 2018, I believe? Yeah, Worldcon 2018, they brought a whole bunch of people to the con, and at the Hugo Losers Party, a bunch of them were there. It was just, anyways, very nice of John and everyone else who was part of donating for that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Loteria, I misspoke. That's his series on the 12 Mexican mythology, basically.
Yeah, you can see some of here in this art. Back here, this is one from that.
Yeah.
A lot of these are
very colorful and vivid and just cool. Stunning, yeah. So...
No, we're not done.
Yeah. No, I know. What do we have next?
I'm trying to get to it. Aziz eating breakfast as the Red Kraken. This is one of my favorite picks of the weekend.
Got to fuel funny. Up.
Yeah, and Jake
starring Jake and the Cat of Black and White. Also wanted some cereal.
Yeah. Here is the Muppet Tullies with our heads off. There were two people who played Grover. Our friend Amber, who is the other Dalton Greyjoy, was also Grover on Thursday because we were Muppets twice on Thursday and Saturday. Because we went to the Muppet Shoot and did a kind of a test trial run, really. So that's all of us. Here is us, some professional photography in the city.
Such a good shot.
Yeah, it's really funny. Here is me replicating this behind-the-scenes pic of Damon, Matt Smith, and Oscar Tully, played by Archie Barnes. So we replicated this. This is Dom from the chat and Folkwise. And my caption for this is Oscar loves trash. Here's a picture Sean took from the panels he went to. He went to a couple different House of the Dragon, World of Ice and Fire panels. And this is the room that they had it in. They had all of these banners up, and which I think is cool. And Sean, why don't you tell us about your experience at some of these panels and what panels you went to?
There were several different ones, but the one I found most intriguing was the Worst Person in Westeros Hot D edition. Tara from Ice and Fire Con was on this panel, and I think she might have been on all the panels. And
I'm pretty sure they were on every World of Ice and Fire panel. Yeah.
And I think they do it every year too. But anyway, the point is that this Worst Person in Westeros one it's usually just a chance to trash talk the people you don't like, right? But this wasn't like a perfectly regimented debate structure, but they had brackets, right? They had nominated people from a Facebook poll to be the worst person in Westeros, and then went through each pairing and discussed them, and then had the audience vote, and then so it went from a top 8 to a top 4 and so on. And I'll go ahead and give you the spoiler alert. Laris won. I thought the prime
hard to argue
would be. Yeah, I thought the prime candidates would be Kristen Cole, or maybe maybe Damon or Aemond, or maybe even Otto or something. But Laris beat them all out, and it was interesting that the sorts of conversations that were had and the reasonings people had for their votes, like pretty quickly, the idea of the worst person in Westeros versus the worst person for Westeros was sort of a question that was being asked, right? Like,
what's the difference?
Intent versus outcome, basically, right? Like some random dude that you never heard of that runs a farm in the Riverlands, he might be a really evil person. He might want to kill his neighbor, and maybe even did kill his neighbor, and raped or murdered 2 or 3 other people in his little section of farmland in the middle, but no one's heard of him. No one realizes that he did or wants to do these awful things. Where Viserys maybe wanted good things. He never actively, I think you could mostly argue, he never actively did any bad things. But he kind of passively made a lot of big mistakes that ended up leading to war and conflict. So like the results of his actions, you could argue, were really bad for Westeros, even though he wasn't a really bad person. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense to me.
So a lot of times that was like central to the debate in picking people, and some of the people who were contenders to be worse just got matched up in the first round, like Aemond and Daemon were matched up in the first round, But as it got closer to the end, and it seemed like a lot of the arguments, a lot of the decisions were for people who had more power and impact. And, maybe Otto had like some selfishness to put his family in power, and he wasn't necessarily trying to cause war. He was doing things that he knew would end up causing war. He was willing to kill off the blacks to get the greens in more power. But he also seemed to be trying to avoid war. But he's at such a high power level, he ends up having his actions end up leading to a lot of deaths. Whereas maybe someone like Laris murdered his own dad and his own son, but he didn't do it by his own hand, or his brother and his dad, but he didn't do it by his own hand, and he didn't like maybe quite as directly cause the war. He's, angling for power, much like Otto, but his angling for power isn't causing cities to be burned down.
He has kind of bad intentions and bad
but
outcome, you were saying. He reached that intersection if he has both.
Yeah. Well, not just that. This is what started to come up in the discussions, is that Otto or Aemond, they're kind of like anime villains. They're kind of like a character from a fictional story or a legend from the past that did these awful things, but it's hard to imagine being in the same room with them. Does that make sense? But it's a little easier to imagine the creepiness of Lares or Kristen Cole, right? You've encountered people like them who are trying to manipulate
I see that point. Sure,
assault you. It's a little bit more personal or relatable.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people in the audience at this event, at least, were driven more by that fact that they could feel on a more personal level the badness. It's something like, Laris kind of manipulating Alicent, as opposed to this guy who burned down a city. It's just it's more abstract and hard to swallow. Does that make sense? So,
it translates better to the real world. Yeah, Laris's form of evil and scumbaggery and creepiness is more, would fit better in the real world if he was a character in a non-fictional story or something, or a fictional real world story.
But one way or the other, it was a very thought-provoking, interesting.
Yeah, it's
even
interesting.
Though I disagreed with almost every vote, I was on the minority side. But I still appreciated the discussions and thoughts.
Yeah, like how people value, like what matters most when you're judging these sort of people. Like what is evil? You're getting into the nitty-gritty of like, well, some people have worse intentions, but what matters more is what they actually do. Yeah, it's an interesting philosophical question. I think it's very worthy of a Song of Ice and Fire type discussions, because we're also focused on the characters, and this is getting into that. That's that vibe, basically. Yeah.
And if you haven't gone to a con at all, you should, because panels are usually kind of the bread and butter of cons. And you end up with all this cosplay and side events and dances and all this other stuff. But at any given moment, there's 20 different rooms full of 100 people having interesting conversations.
Or just playing board games, or like you don't have to do any of the partying stuff. You don't have to do any of the cosplay stuff, or you can watch only. Like, there are so many ways to interact with a convention like this.
Yeah, let me say, you could have a con where all you did was play board games and video games, right? And the arcade and the gaming area. That could be your whole con. You could have a con where you went to tons of fan panels. You could have a con where you did all the big celebrity panels and photo ops. You could do a con where you... Oh, sorry.
Party in people's rooms and do karaoke.
Yeah, where you do room parties the whole time and you're doing karaoke. You could do all the photo shoots and hang out outside. You could do a con where you don't even buy a badge and you hang out outside on the steps and you just people watch and you have a great time. I'm just like, this guy is I definitely have missed. You can do a con where you go to the ballroom parties, the dance parties, and I have friends who like set their alarm to wake up at 3 a.m. to go to the late night rave that goes from 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Like, that is what they want to do at the con, right? So, like, my point being, like, you could go to 10 years of the con and have a vastly different experience every year. It's amazing. I love DragonCon. Yes, it's hot and humid, but a lot of it's air conditioned.
Most of it's inside.
It is really big. It is 80,000 people. Roughly. So that is it. So if it's your first con, maybe you try smaller con first, but I love conventions. I think it's a great way to meet your fellow fan and feel community, and I just can't recommend it enough. And for DragonCon, it's our hometown con. Me and Sean used to live here. So we go every year. It's not like all the other cons where maybe we can't afford to go or the timing is bad. It's 30 minutes from where we live. So I've been going since the 90s. No matter when you're hearing this, if you're considering going to DragonCon, know that History of Westeros will be at DragonCon. Hit us up to say hi. Yes, absolutely. It happens Labor Day weekend every year. It's always that weekend. Never changes. All right. That is our show for today, unless Sean or Shea have any final thoughts. That covers all our thoughts on the spinoffs, all the potential spinoffs, all the ones we know are coming, as well as our coverage of DragonCon 2024. Yeah. The trivia answer. The question was, what two houses were going to marry in the unseen pilot of the show Blood Moon? A lot of y'all knew this already. I didn't mention it during the episode, but I did mention it during an episode a couple years ago. Some of you may have known anyway. One was Stark, right? Yeah, Stark and Lannister. Yeah. Lannister, okay. The plot was going to be
that and
Lannister, not Casterly, huh?
They said Lannister. Yeah, I think they were changing. I think they were just doing. I think they were past the Casterlys at that point. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. Maybe it was the Casterlys. I think they were past the Casterlys though. And
I do not think they were past the Casterlys at this point because Naomi Watts' character was probably a Casterly.
well, either way, it was to the marriage was to Casterly Rock, and there was going to be an assassination attempt. That's how we found out about it. There was some of the text from the show that leaked. An Andal dynasty was going to prevent these two houses from uniting in advance of an Andal invasion or something like that. So it looked like the timeline was going to be seriously compressed because the Andals shouldn't be invading anywhere near the Long Night. In fact, they shouldn't even exist as a cultural body yet. But either way, that show was canceled. So, well, what? It doesn't matter. As I said at the beginning, no more show content until Night of the Seven Kingdoms, minus the intro episode that we'll put out, sometime fairly soon. And of course, we still have the episode 8 breakdown that's coming. So technically, there's that. And our next episode will be the Dance of the Dragons with Radio Westeros scripted content, episode 7, which is the final episode of that coverage. It's book-only coverage of the Dance of the Dragons portion of Fire and Blood, so that's pretty cool. Also, want to mention that we are going to be in Caceres, Spain.
We hope.
It's probably going to be there at the end of November for the City of Dragons event, which Caceres is where King's Landing is for House of the Dragon. It used to be Croatia for the first show, but now it's Caceres, and some other stuff is filmed around there. So we're gonna go there for the city event that's all about sponsoring tourism and trying to get people to go visit there. And we'll be spreading the word about it, assuming everything happens. So we wanted to let you all know in case you are able to make it out there, or if you happen to live in the area, if you're a Spanish listener. I know we don't have a lot of y'all, but if you are one of them, then chance to meet not just us, but a lot of other Song of Ice and Fire people, podcasters and YouTubers and celebrities in a few cases.
Yeah, to speak about this for a second, I dropped a link in the chat. It is called the City of Dragons in Caceres, and if you look it up, you can find a little bit of information. They haven't fully started promoting it yet, and we haven't had anything booked, which is why we're hesitant to be like, yes, we will be there. But regardless of whether we are there, this event will happen. It will be the last weekend of November. And it is a free citywide event with some paid things like an escape room and some other stuff. The link in the chat has some information. But it is like a tourism event and meant to be more free. So if you just are looking to visit Spain, it is a good time to go, I would say. And hopefully we will go and be on a little bit of some panel discussions and part of stuff. But mainly we would be going and vlogging and sharing and documenting it and stuff to share with y'all later as well. So anyways, I hope to have more for you, but because it is such a big event, we wanted to at least mention it, even though we are not 100% confirmed yet. So hopefully you can plan for it.
Yeah, we hope to see some of you there. Hopefully we'll be there too. But we'll continue to follow up with more news about it. As soon as we confirm or can't confirm, we will do that.
And we'll see if I decide to say Cathereth.
That's just not 100% confirmed.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
Is it pretentious for me to say Cathereth, or should I? I can't decide which is.
I don't think it's pretentious to try to pronounce it properly.
I know, it just sounds crazy from an American
slightest.
accent. I don't know, we don't have quite the we don't have the delicate touch with it. It's more like
it makes me sound. I just sound like I have a lisp when I say it.
Yeah, basically, which is why I feel silly doing it. But like, if we could do it with that delicate tone, it would be better.
We'll have to practice.
We will practice. We have months to practice.
Yes, that's right. Okay, folks, thank you for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate this detour from our normal content. This is we kind of do an episode like this maybe once or twice a year at most, but it's fun. It's a little change of pace. But of course, like I said, we're back to heavy book content the rest of the season. We hope you'll be there for that. It's a long journey. It's never ending. This fandom is forever. And we're glad to have you with us. On behalf of Shea and Sean, we'll see you all next time. Thanks as well to Joey, Jesse, and Brand for our intro, outro, music, and video stuff. Thanks as well to Michael Klarfeld for the maps. And thanks to everybody who we met at DragonCon or hung out with at DragonCon too. And we'll see you all next time. And you know what to do. Valar, read us.